operations, a cargo truck was deliberately plowed into crowds in Nice, killing more than 80 people. Trump and Macron spent several hours together Thursday in some of Paris's most opulent settings, with a visit to the golden-domed Invalides monument, followed by meetings at the presidential palace. Trump also marked the 100th anniversary of America's entry into World War I by visiting U.S. troops. A visit, along with the celebration of French national pride on Bastille Day, was cast by the White House as a commemoration of the U.S.-French military alliance, both then and now. The leaders and their wives capped Thursday with a lavish dinner at the Jules Verne restaurant in the Eiffel Tower.
Okay, here's a story that is out of this world. Dropping by Jupiter's red spot. A NASA spacecraft circling Jupiter is revealing the up-close beauty of our solar system's biggest planetary storm. Juno flew directly over Jupiter's great red spot on Monday, passing an amazingly close 5,600 miles above the monster storm. The images snapped by JunoCam were beamed back Tuesday and posted online on Wednesday. Then members of the public, so-called citizen scientists, were encouraged to enhance the raw images. Swirling clouds are clearly visible in the 10,000-mile wide storm, which is big enough to swallow Earth and has been around for centuries. For hundreds of years, scientists have been observing, wondering, and theorizing about Jupiter's great red spot, said lead researcher Scott Bolton of the Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio. Now we have the best pictures ever of this iconic storm. Information was still arriving Thursday from Juno's science instruments. Bolton said it will take time to analyze everything to shed new light on the past, present, and future of the great red spot. Juno's next close encounter with the giant gas planet will be in September. The great red spot won't be in Juno's scopes then, however. Launched in 2011, Juno arrived at Jupiter last July. It is only the second spacecraft to orbit the solar system's largest planet, but is passing much closer than NASA's Galileo did from 1995 through 2003.
Okay, here is a human interest story about some Afghan girls who will be allowed into the U.S. for a robotics contest. A group of girls from Afghanistan are getting their wish of coming to the United States for a robotics competition. The girls' application for U.S. visas had been denied twice, but the White House says President Donald Trump intervened and they will be allowed in to participate in the competition next week in Washington. Wednesday's announcement ended a saga that had sparked international backlash. Homeland Security Department spokesman David Lapin said the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services approved a State Department request for 6 girls from the war-torn country to be allowed in, along with their chaperone, so they can participate in the competition. The nonprofit organizing the competition celebrated the reversal in a jubilant statement Wednesday. I truly believe our greatest power is the power to convene nations, to bring people together in the pursuit of a common goal, and prove that our similarities greatly outweigh our differences, said Joe Sestak, president of First Global. He credited the professional leadership of the U.S. State Department for ensuring that all 163 teams from 157 countries, including a team of Syrian refugees, would be able to participate.
You can check if you're progeny of a pilgrim. The number of people trying to determine whether they are descended from a Mayflower passenger is surging as the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims' arrival in the New World approaches in 2020. Now, a partnership announced Thursday between the New England Historic Genealogical Society and the General Society of Mayflower Descendants is making it easier to figure out. The Boston-based Genealogical Society is digitizing and indexing authenticated Mayflower Pilgrim genealogies and 50 years worth of the Mayflower Quarterly magazine, and making them available at its research site, www.americanancestors.org. There were 102 people on the Mayflower when it landed in Massachusetts in 1620. Half died in the first year. This is amazing. Today, there are an estimated 10 million living Americans and as many as 35 million people worldwide descended from that resilient little group, said Lee Filson, Governor General of the Plymouth-based General Society of Mayflower Descendants. They include presidents, poets, and celebrities. Yet her organization has only about 30,000 members. She'd like to see that grow. With the 400th anniversary coming up, we've seen a huge uptick in membership applications, Filson said. But at the same time, people say they have a hard time getting a hold of our records. The genealogies, called silver books because of their distinctive covers, have previously only been available for purchase from the Mayflower Society or from libraries, said Ryan Woods, the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Genealogical Society. They include about 150,000 birth, marriage, death, and deed records. The Mayflower Society's records are so accurate and unimpeachable that tracing their roots to them automatically qualifies you for membership. The information is valuable to people who think but don't have proof that they are Mayflower descendants, as well as those who already know they are but want to learn more. The idea is that family history is a very personal way to engage with topics of the past, influences on our culture, and the creation of our country, Woods said. Thanks to several television shows, genealogical research is now America's second most popular hobby after gardening, Filson said. And discovering you're the progeny of a pilgrim is the gold standard in family research. It's a real emotional thing when you discover you're a Mayflower descendant, she said. I've seen people break down in tears. When Filson's organization decided to digitize its records, it immediately thought of teaming up with the Genealogical Society. Established in 1845, it is the premier national resource for genealogists and family historians. The digitization process is already underway. 7 of the 31 silver books are online, and the plan is to finish the process by the end of the year. And then they'll start working on the Mayflower Quarterly editions dating to 1935. Like all records posted at www.americanancestors.org, browsers will be allowed temporary free access before a paid membership is required. There are many, many people who could be related literally to this story, Woods said.
Okay, we'll move on to some news of local interest. Youth Build has 24 graduates who move on with skills and GEDs. Martin Macias Jr. was a 2-time high school dropout who had logged stints working as a mover, a warehouse worker, and in restaurants when he entered Goodwill's Youth Build program. Months later, Macias, 21, has earned his GED and started classes at Metropolitan Community College. He dreams of becoming a chef and traveling the world doing the 2 things he loves, cooking and eating. It was quite a journey, he said Thursday at a graduation ceremony for Youth Build's class of 2017. The program, aimed at people 16 to 24, helps high school dropouts and the chronically underemployed obtain GEDs and learn construction skills. During the 10-month training program, students work on their math and reading skills while learning how to hang drywall or paint apartments as part of a community service project. They also work on soft skills arriving to work on time, and stepping up to lead a team. Youth Build is affiliated with the AmeriCorps program and funded through grants from local organizations and the U.S. Department of Labor. At the packed ceremony that drew beaming families clutching shiny balloons and bouquets of roses, Youth Build staff and participants talked about the obstacles the 24 graduates had faced. Some were young parents acclimating to the responsibilities of raising a child. Others had struggled to hold a job, or, like Macias, dropped out of school to earn a paycheck, or because they didn't see the purpose behind showing up to school. When I first came to the program, I was of the mindset that I could do whatever I wanted with no consequences, graduate Josiah Arshad said. But gradually, he matured. He learned how to work as part of a team. Devontae Battles, 24, said he wasn't motivated enough to graduate from high school. He already was working in construction and heard about the Youth Build program from his brother. He was supposed to graduate from high school in 2011 and felt like he had fallen far behind. I really needed my GED, he said. I felt like this was my last chance. The nonprofit organization has struggled to regain community trust after a World Herald series revealed the high salaries of Goodwill executives and thrift store profits that largely funded salaries and overhead costs instead of job training programs. Donations and thrift stores' sales have dropped since the World Herald's investigation, but the organization is fighting to hold on to the tax-exempt status of its retail stores. This ceremony has always been something for us that shows when you commit to changing things, when you commit to changing your life, good things happen, Koster said.
Ricketts unveils initiative. Governor Pete Ricketts on Thursday created a new international trade council to help drive development of trade opportunities for Nebraska in an expanding global market. The council will bring together business, agriculture, and education groups to work together to expand overseas trade opportunities and develop new international partnerships, the governor's office said. We want to raise our profile and do better in international markets, Ricketts told a morning news conference. Ricketts unveiled the new undertaking in advance of his second annual Governor's Summit on Economic Development. The council will help coordinate and leverage all our resources in driving expanded trade, he said. Increased trade fits the Grow Nebraska vision that has been a driving theme of his governorship, Ricketts said. A couple dozen members of the council gathered with the governor to launch the new undertaking. The council will meet annually and stay in touch quarterly, Ricketts said. The governor said he will continue to lead trade missions overseas, following previous trips to Europe and Asia that have paid off in terms of foreign investment and expansion in the state. University of Nebraska Lincoln Chancellor Ronnie Green hailed creation of the Trade Council as a great move forward for Nebraska. Education and research help develop economic powerhouses for the state, Green added. The key to the future is innovation. Barry Kennedy, president of the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce and Industry, said Nebraska exported $6 billion in manufacturing products last year. Increased trade creates more jobs and spurs economic growth for the state, he said. Ricketts pointed to the recent trade agreement that opened the Chinese market to U.S. beef. Nebraska was the first state to take advantage of that opportunity. With a growing middle class in China, the governor said, $200 million in annual beef sales looms as a possibility. Trade is critical to the well-being of Nebraska agriculture and will continue to grow in its importance into the future, Nebraska Farm Bureau President Steve Nelson said. Today, Nebraska farm and ranch families rely on international trade for 30% of their overall income.
All right, and here's an article about a local National Guard, Nebraska National Guard unit returning from Iraq. When the crowd saw his bust and bus and burst into applause, Sergeant Major Jeremy Priester watched his fellow soldiers. He saw their grins at the police escort ahead of them and the fire trucks hoisting an enormous flag over the road. Hundreds had gathered to embrace members of the 1st Infantry Division Main Command Post-Operational Detachment. Priester expected the tears and the cries of "Daddy" as the 90 Nebraska Army National Guard soldiers exited their buses. He'd seen it after his 3 prior deployments. So he looked again to his soldiers. As an old guy, there's nothing like seeing that joy in my soldiers' eyes when they see that for the first time, Priester said. The soldiers were returning from a 9-month deployment to Iraq, where they spearheaded a new type of unit that integrates into a division headquarters to augment its staff. Specialists in areas such as legal affairs, artillery, aviation, and a variety of other fields were assigned to the detachment. Many soldiers also had to train for new positions. Staff Sergeant John Kowski served as a geospatial intelligence analyst on this deployment, his 4th. After posing for photos and hugging his family, Kowski sat with his baby nephew he'd just met in the baseball stadium. Looking around at the crowd, filling up about half of the stadium's lower rows of seats, Kowski said he was grateful for the homecoming. On days like today, I always think of the guys who didn't get this, like in Vietnam, he said. I appreciate that a lot. Sabrina Kowski of Ashland welcomed her husband with an assortment of other family members. Many wore matching t-shirts. Even though the family members are basically pros at enduring deployments, the waiting doesn't get easier, she said. Her 9-year-old son had experienced his father's deployment before, but her 4-year-old son hadn't. He never quite understood where his father had gone, she said. It's the best day ever for them, she said. There's so much excitement and tears. They're so glad Daddy's back. The unit was unusual not only in its scope, but also in the way it split up. Traditional Guard units head out together and stay together, Priester said. This one split up to as many as 14 different places at a time, often without their leadership present. The unit was also created and deployed within 6 months, which is pretty unprecedented, Priester said. The largest of their active ongoing operations was aiding in the liberation of Mosul from the Islamic State, Priester said. It was really the Iraqi partners liberating Mosul, but our forces helped them along the way in giving them what they needed, Priester said. The city was recaptured by Iraqi forces on Monday. One of the speakers, Major General Daryl Bohack, summed up the success of the mission more simply. 90 left and 90 came home, he said. That's a pretty good day.
Okay, here's a legal kind of story. A judge says evidence inadmissible because of illegal stop. A judge has ruled that evidence obtained after police illegally stopped a Lincoln man as he rode on his bike cannot be used against him at trial, but he still can be tried for allegedly resisting arrest. Charles Sales Jr., 53, is facing 3 felonies on allegations he possessed methamphetamine with intent to deliver, possessed money while violating drug law, and resisted arrest with a prior offense. In court records, a Lincoln police officer said he saw Sales 33rd Street and Huntington Avenue at about 4:30 a.m. August 20th, riding a bike on a crosswalk, which the officer believed was a city ordinance violation. He stopped Sales to lecture him on city bicycle rules and noticed that he seemed to be under the influence of drugs and had something in the pocket of his sweatshirt. During the exchange that followed, the officer said he saw a small plastic bag that appeared to have meth in it. When Sales tried to pull away from the officer tackled and arrested him. Sales attorney Chad Withers argued that all of the evidence, including the officer's observations of Sales' alleged attempt to resist arrest, should be suppressed because it isn't a crime to ride a bike across the sidewalk, so the officer lacked probable cause to stop him. At a hearing on Wither's motion, the state conceded the stop was unlawful and that the drugs and money couldn't be used against him at trial, but that his behavior when he allegedly resisted arrest could, according to Lancaster County District Judge Jody Nelson's order last week. The judge agreed. The Nebraska law is clear, Nelson said. One may not forcibly resist arrest, regardless of whether the arrest itself is legal or not. Under the defense's theory, if a defendant shot and killed an officer during an illegal search, the state couldn't prosecute the defendant for murder, she said. Without evidence of the drugs or alleged drug money, those charges seem likely to go away before the case goes to trial in August.
Yes, and here's a article about the recent increase in property tax valuations. Douglas County taxpayers filed just over 6,600 property tax valuation protests this year, a record. Almost 5,200 of those came from homeowners, also a record. In Sarpy County, 673 property tax protests have been filed this year. That's down from 2016. The deadline for filing or mailing a protest was June 30th. A few postmarked by June 30th are still trickling in by mail. In 2016, when the state of Nebraska mandated higher valuations across a large swath of Omaha, 4,874 Douglas County taxpayers filed protests. They included about 3,100 on residential valuations. This year, controversy arose from large proposed increases in thousands of Douglas County homeowners' valuations for tax purposes. County Assessor Diane Badiato trimmed the increases. Some county board members held town hall meetings to explain the protest process. While the number of protests is up, it still represents a sliver, about 3%, of the 220,000 real estate parcels in Douglas County. Badiato noted that her office changed the valuation on 149,444 of those properties this year. Last year, she said, her office changed the valuation on about 108,000 properties. That means the ratio of protests to valuation changes was about the same this year as last, roughly 4.5%. Referees, independent appraisal experts hired by the counties, are reviewing the protests. They will make recommendations to the county boards, which will then set final valuations. Taxpayers who still disagree can appeal to the Nebraska Tax Equalization and Review Commission.
Violent property crime down. This is in the Lincoln area. Violent and property crime is down 8% in Lincoln compared with the same time period last year, Lincoln Police Chief Jeff Bleimeister said on Thursday. It's the lowest total since 1990, Bleimeister added. Those reported crimes are murder, manslaughter, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, motor vehicle theft, and arson. Larceny accounts for the most crimes, he said. Calculating just year-to-date numbers for violent crimes shows a bit of a different number. Those have increased 3.1%. That can be attributed to the new broadened definition of forcible rape required by the FBI, Bleimeister said. The new definition includes same-sex assaults, forcible penetration with an object, female on male assaults, and an array of other assaults not covered under the previous definition. The old definition's focus was male on female assaults. There have been 4 criminal shootings resulting in injury in 2017 and no homicides. By this time last year, 8 people had been killed. Another statistic Bleimeister shared, Lincoln police have responded to 10.7% more mental health calls so far this year compared with last year. Police have been working with healthcare professionals to help those who need help beyond what police can offer. One of their efforts is a collaboration with the Mental Health Association of Nebraska called the REAL, REAL program. It connects Lincoln cops with mental health peers who can help people in need, whether it's a place to sleep, a pamphlet of resources, or someone to talk to.
Okay, here's an article about boosting overseas trade as a focus of a new council. Governor Pete Ricketts on Thursday named a new international trade council tasked with expanding overseas trade.
I read that already.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
This article was read out of the Lincoln paper, so I will continue on with an article about Greg Eibach, who is a Director of Agriculture in Nebraska. Nebraska's State Agriculture Director on Thursday declined to confirm a report that he's under consideration for a top job with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Politico reported that Director Greg Eibach is in the running for Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs with the Federal Ag Department. Eibach said he believes the USDA is in the process of looking at a lot of different people for a lot of different jobs. Asked if he's interested in the position, Eibach said, "Of course, but," he said, "there's a lot of talented people out there. Every young farmer in Nebraska hopes someday that maybe he could do something bigger," he said. "Of course it would be something interesting, but that's no different from every farmer in this room." Eibach said he's talked to U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue a number of times about Nebraska agriculture. The two were together in China promoting Nebraska beef. Eibach has been Nebraska's ag director since 2005. He was appointed by then Governor Dave Heineman and reappointed by Governor Pete Ricketts.
Beatrice Fairbury okayed drug testing. Beatrice and Fairbury public schools will begin random drug testing of high school students involved in extracurricular activities this fall. School boards in both districts voted Monday to begin testing for drugs and alcohol, joining a relatively small number of Nebraska schools that allow such testing. In 1995, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that drug testing for high school athletes was constitutional, and Fairbury and Beatrice will join 40 other Nebraska high schools that give random tests to students, according to Beatrice officials. Lincoln Public Schools is not among the districts that use random drug testing. Instead, LPS follows a student code of conduct that prohibits drug and alcohol use or possession and offers consistent consequences for students who violate the rules, said LPS Athletic Director Kathy Weiskamp. She said LPS also participates in a school community intervention program to which it can, and I'm going to another page, to which it can refer students with drug or alcohol problems. One factor against drug testing is the high cost, she said. Instead, at LPS, schools find ways to be proactive and encourage students not to use drugs or alcohol, such as a campaign at Northeast where kids signed pledges agreeing to be drug and alcohol free. In Beatrice, officials said they began working on the policy more than a year ago after a few students prompted the discussion. The Beatrice policy will require students and their guardians to sign a consent form for the random drug testing as a prerequisite to participating in extracurricular activities. The purpose of the policy, according to its text, is to identify students who use illegal drugs and alcohol and encourage them to participate in treatment programs. Tests would involve taking breath, saliva, or urine samples from students and having them sent out for testing. Fairbury's policy, also approved on Monday, is similar. In Beatrice, the consequences of a first positive test would include a meeting with the principal and parents, a 21-day ban from school activities, and mandatory drug testing once a month for the next 6 months. A second positive would result in a 6-week ban from activities, a drug and alcohol assessment at the student's expense, and mandatory testing for 12 months.
Okay, concerning street improvements, here's an article that states 2018 will be a long year for North 168th Street commuters. Heavily traveled North 168th Street between West Maple and West Dodge Road will be closed for much of 2018 for a multi-million-dollar upgrade. Officials initially planned to keep at least 2 lanes of the street open during most of the work. But city engineer Todd Fitzer said closing that stretch of the roadway is the safest and quickest option for the project. The upgrade will widen 168th Street from 2 lanes to 4 lanes and add a median and left turn lane. The project also will include improvements to the 168th and Blondo Streets intersection. During construction, drivers who normally head south on 168th to get into the West Dodge Expressway or shop at Village Point Shopping Center will have to use other streets. Amy Drummond, a commuter who lives just southwest of 168th and Blondo, said the closing of 168th will definitely affect me. Instead of an easy trek along southbound 168th, she will need to find a new route for her job near 120th and I Streets. Yes, it's going to be a mess, but something has to be done with 168th Street, she said. I would much rather live with the temporary pain of construction, that's for sure, to have the project turn out to be a success in the long run. An estimated 17,700 vehicles use 168th Street daily. Officials expect the number to increase to 30,500 daily by 2040. Fitzer said that by closing the street during the project, crews will be able to focus on completing major sections as a whole rather than in pieces. That, he said, will lead to a better finished project. Closing it also will be more efficient, he said, and give contractors more flexibility, allowing construction equipment and materials to be stored on site. The main access to Heritage Point, an assisted living facility on the northwest corner of 168th and Blondo, is off 168th Street. So the project will mean that residents and visitors will have to drive on neighborhood streets to reach the facility, said Lacey Jungman, Director of Sales and Marketing for Heritage Communities. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, Jungman said. She said, however, that any short-term problems will be outweighed by the benefits of the new roadway. All of the road construction is a good thing. The project, estimated to cost more than $21 million initially, was set to be completed in 2 phases. West Maple to Blondo Street, then Blondo to West Dodge, with the second phase probably set for 2019. But the city combined both phases into one project. Funding for the widening will come from city bond measures and the Arterial Street Improvement Program, to which developers contribute when making improvements in new developments.
Okay, it's time for us to move on to the obituaries today. And I will be reading the obituaries from the Lincoln Journal-Star. And I start with Anderson, Dorothy E. Anderson, 91, of New Brighton, Minnesota. She was born March 24th in Niobe, North Dakota. March 24th of 1926 in Niobe, North Dakota. The funeral will be at 11 a.m. on Saturday at Swoboda Funeral Home in Wahoo. Memorials are suggested to Bethlehem College and Seminary, and Marcy Swoboda Mortuary handling the arrangements. Anderson, Wilma M. Anderson, 99 years of age, of Geneva. Ashby, Catherine Sloan Ashby, age 93. Funeral service at 2 p.m. on Saturday at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Geneva. Memorials to Geneva Public Library or Fillmore County Historical Society, Farmer and Son Funeral Home of Geneva handling arrangements. Bordonia, Janine Bordonia, 84 years of age. Celebration of life will be held at 11 a.m. on Saturday, July the 15th at Roper and Sons Chapel. And obviously Roper and Sons handling the arrangements. Buster, Eldon L. Buster, 66 years of age, of Deschler. Castillo, Ernesto G. Castillo, 91, of Lincoln. Mass of Christian burial at 10 a.m. on Saturday, July 15th, North American Martyrs Catholic Church. Lincoln, memorials in care of the family, and Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home handling arrangements. Dreesen, Helen Maxine Dreesen, 94 years of age. Maxine taught in a one-room schoolhouse and supported the war effort by winding electric motors for airplanes. Goebel, Clinton Robert Goebbels, 32, of Lincoln. Memorial service is 2 p.m. on Saturday, July 15th at Colonial Chapel Funeral Home. Memorials may be directed to the family for a later designation, and Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home handling arrangements. Desiree Ann Reaver, 62 years of age, of Lincoln. Hirschberger, Bernice V. Hirschberger, 95, of Milford. Memorial service at 11 a.m. on Saturday, July 15th at Milford Mennonite Church. Memorials to Milford Mennonite Church and arrangements by Lauber Moore Funeral Home of Milford. Kujath, Jimmy D. Kujath, 76 years of age. Mangold, Constance Peets Mangold, 90, of Lincoln. Mass of Christian burial at 1 p.m. on Saturday, August 26th at St. Patrick's Catholic Church. Memorials are to go to Alexandra's house at 638 West 39th in Terrace, Kansas City, Missouri. Also to St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Sidney, Nebraska, or the Fred and Pamela Buffett Cancer Center in Omaha. Roper and Sons handling arrangements. Nissen, James A. Nissen, 80, of Lincoln, Air Force veteran. Visitation will be at 12 to 9 p.m. with the family present from 6 to 8 p.m. Friday at Boothera's Macer and Love Funeral Home. Celebration of his life will be at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday at Trinity Lutheran Church, and Boothera's Macer and Love Funeral Home in charge of arrangements. Seiberniker, Emily Lily Anna Seiberniker, 91 years of age, of Fairbury. Smith, Sawyer Reed Smith, 23 years of age. Celebration of life attended by immediate family and friends was held at 1,000 Steps Beach, Laguna Beach, California. A celebration of life for family and close friends will also be held in Lincoln, and memorials are to go to Cinema Makeup School in Los Angeles, California, or to Animal Care in the City Drive South in Orange, California. Spence, Gregory L. Spence, age 52, of Lincoln. Mass of Christian burial at 10:30 a.m. on Saturday at St. John's Catholic Church. Memorials to the family to be designated at a later date. Boothera's Macer and Love Funeral Home handling the arrangements. Walters, Arnold John Walters Jr., 68 years of age. Casual service honoring John's life will be held at 11 a.m. on Saturday, July 15th at First Plymouth Congregational Church. followed by a celebration of life. Wear your favorite bright colored shirt and socks. Memorials may be made in remembrance of John to Food Bank of Lincoln, YMCA of Lincoln, Eastmont Towers Foundation, Morning Hope Grief Center, or a charitable organization of your choice. Roper and Sons handling arrangements. Wheatley, William Walt Wheatley, 68, of Lufton, Texas. Wellman, Donald L. Wellman, 87, of Auburn, a military veteran. Funeral at 2 p.m. on Monday, 7/17, at St. Paul Lutheran in Auburn. Hemmingson Funeral Home of Auburn handling arrangements. And the last obituary announcement in the Lincoln Journal-Star is Wood, William Bill Aaron Wood, 90, of Lincoln. Memorial service at 1 p.m. on Monday, 7/17, at East Ridge Presbyterian Church. Memorials to Voices of Hope or the Church, and Roper and Sons handling the arrangement.
Okay, and these obituaries are from the World Herald. Buke, Sally A. Buke, private services were held at Forest Lawn Cemetery. Bysack, Carol Bysack, age 40. Funeral service 9 a.m. Saturday, Morning Star Baptist Church. Thomas Funeral Home handling arrangements. Clifton, Helen F. Clifton, age 90. Celebration of life, 11 a.m. Saturday, July 15th at Bremen Mortuary. Memorials may be made to An Angel's Touch in Omaha. Bremen Mortuary handling arrangements. Coles, John Earl Coles, age 86, was a veteran. Celebration of life, Saturday, July 15th, at Bremen Mortuary, 72nd Street Chapel, who is handling arrangements. Collins, Bruce A. Collins, age 56. Funeral service, 1 p.m., Monday, July 17th, at the Hoy Kilnowski Funeral Home. The family will direct memorials. Craddy, Kenneth Robert Craddy. Memorial service, Saturday, July 15th at 11 a.m. at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. In lieu of flowers, memorials to American Red Cross. Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler handling arrangements. Hawes, Paul R. Hawes, age 98. Graveside service, 11 a.m., with military honors for this veteran by the American Legion Post number 2503. Family requests casual dress. West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home handling arrangements. Jackson, Thomas E. Jackson, age 77. Memorial service, Saturday, July 15th, 11:30 a.m. at Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler Bel Air Chapel, who is handling arrangements. Jensen, Stanley L. Jensen, age 87. Memorial service at 1 p.m. Saturday at First Central Congregational Church in Omaha. In lieu of flowers, memorials can be sent to Tangier Transportation Fund, First Central Congregational Church in Omaha. Crosby, Burkett, Swanson, and Golden Colonial Chapel is handling arrangements. Johnson, Clifford Johnson, Jr., age 84, who was a veteran. Reception of friends, Saturday, July 15th, from 2 to 4 p.m. at Bellevue Memorial Chapel, who is handling arrangements. Memorials to American Lung Association. Kimmons, Mary Kay Kimmons, age 73. Memorial service, Friday, July 14th at 11 a.m. at Christ Community Church. Memorials to the Deaf Ministries at Christ Community Church or Deaf Missions in Council Bluffs, Iowa. Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler handling arrangements. Lewis, Barbara J. Lewis. Wake service Friday 7 p.m. at the Bel Air Chapel. Memorials may be directed to the family. Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler handling arrangements. Lindsay, Roseanne M. Lindsay, age 55. Celebration of Life service Saturday at 10 a.m. at West Lawn Hillcrest Chapel. In lieu of flowers, memorials to Little White Dog Rescue or the Nebraska Cancer Society, West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home handling arrangements. Mark Vicka, Connie K. Mark Vicka. Services at 11 a.m. Graveside services Monday, July 17th at 11 a.m. at Ord Cemetery in Ord, Nebraska. Memorials to Nebraska Humane Society, Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler handling arrangements. Mazzei, Patrick W. Mazzei, age 63. Services Friday, July 14th and Saturday, July 15th in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. McNabb, Constance B. McNabb, age 95. Mass of Christian burial at 11 a.m. at the Church of St. Stephen the Martyr in Omaha. Graveside service Friday at 1:30 p.m. at Calvary Cemetery. Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler handling arrangements. Ostronic, Ann M. Ostronic, age 77. Mass of Christian burial Monday, July 17th at 10:30 at St. Wenceslaus Catholic Church. Memorials to St. Wenceslaus Catholic Church or Fred and Pamela Buffett Cancer Center. Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler handling arrangements. Richardson, Melvin Richardson, age 79. Services to be announced at a later date. Richardson, Richard A. Richardson, who was a veteran of World War II. Funeral service 11 a.m. Monday, July 17th at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. In lieu of flowers, memorials are suggested to Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. Bremen Mortuary handling arrangements. Roby, Curtis A. Roby, Sr., age 62. Memorial service at Trinity Lutheran Church on Saturday, July 15th at 12 p.m. Kramer Funeral Home handling arrangements. Sandstedt, Richard L. Sandstedt, age 89. Complete notice to be given later. Schultz, Shirley A. Schultz. Celebration of Life at 11 a.m. Saturday, July 15th at the Bethany Lutheran Church. Roeder Mortuary in charge of arrangements. Scheibel, Thelma L. Scheibel, age 75. Funeral is Saturday, 10:30 a.m. at the funeral home of Reichmuth, the Reichmuth Funeral Home, who is handling arrangements. Shepard, Patricia L. Shepard. Complete notice to be given later. Heafy, Hoffman, Dwork, and Cutler handling arrangements. Skaggs, Stephen B. Skaggs, who was a veteran of Vietnam. Graveside funeral is at Cedardale Cemetery in Papillion on July 15th at 10 a.m. Collar Dolce Mortuary handling arrangements. And finally, Stearns, Randy Edward Stearns, age 64. Visitation Monday, July 17th, 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. at Mount Vernon Baptist Church. Roeder Mortuary handling arrangements.
Memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible and will go a long way in keeping Radio Talking Book on the air. Please keep Radio Talking Book in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. And donations should be sent to Radio Talking Book Network, 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. Thank you for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter. We reached the halfway point in our reading today. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back with editorials, today's living and entertainment and sports.
And thank you very much, Mike Garrity and David Radliff, for reading the first hour of today's Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. We will be back to both of our
Sorry, I broke in on you
Take a
with
short
that
break.
one story.
Just said,
I never know what to
we
do
will
in a
do
case like
No, that's fine.
the home
I-
delivery
I-
menus for today.
I need to pay, I guess I need to pay more attention to
Well, you
what's
don't
being
expect
read,
that
you
to
know.
happen with local news. I mean, it happens sometimes with
For
national
Friday,
news, but
14th,
Yeah.
it's kind of surprising to me. Did that story
10
come
p.m.
from the Lincoln Star?
half
Where did that
baked
story come from?
potato,
I don't know, it must have been a national, probably from
sour
one of the
cream,
national news services, and both papers picked it
cooked
up. But
vegetables, blend,
that's not a big deal. No.
Well, you
bread
certainly
with
handled it well
margarine,
anyway.
cinnamon applesauce,
Alrighty.
and 1% milk.
And we thank you very much, Ann, for doing the home delivery menus for us today and every weekday. And you can hear this menu repeated again about 1 o'clock, right after the community conversation show for today, which happens at noon, and just prior to Joni Lair's reading from the bookshelf for today. Now here is Profile America for today.
I've got quite a bit of opinion stuff today. Lots of
Yeah.
times I don't.
Profile America, Friday, July 14th. Income taxes first came to America 155 years ago this month, when President Abraham Lincoln signed a bill levying a 3% tax on incomes between $600 and $10,000, and 5% for greater incomes. The tax was rescinded in 1872. The income tax all of us know today dates to 1913, when the 16th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. About 149 million individual income tax returns are submitted annually, reporting tax revenues totaling nearly $1.7 trillion. There are over 31,000 tax preparation offices around the nation. These services employ nearly 194,000 people engaged in figuring out taxes owed. Profile America is in its 21st year as a public service of the U.S. Census Bureau.
And you are listening to the Radio Talking Book Network in Nebraska. One more quick announcement. The movie for this weekend that has been selected and chosen by Ann Pelican is actually a double feature of 2 shorter movies. Both movies are in a series coming from the Disney Home Entertainment Corporation, and they are Air Buddies and Snow Buddies. Air Buddies, I believe, was made in 2006, Snow Buddies in 2008, and they're part of the Air Buddies series. So please tune in tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. for the audio described versions of those 2 movies. And now let's return to our fine readers for the second hour of reading from today's Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. Let's head on back once again and rejoin Mike Garrity and David Radliff.
Thank you, Paul. And this is Mike Garrity back with the Lincoln Journal-Star and their editorial today. It's headlined as First Amendment Goes Far for a Reason. Each year, the Newseum Institute conducts its State of the First Amendment survey, gauging Americans' opinion on specifics of the 5 freedoms it has protected since 1787. This vital amendment, one that's being shaped to this day as Americans push its bounds and courts rule on its scope, ensures liberties denied to far too many global citizens. Yet nearly 23% of those surveyed responded that it goes too far in the rights it guarantees. As a refresher, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Though just 35 words, the First Amendment remains as pivotal to American liberty as it was revolutionary when included in the Constitution. Furthermore, its wide reach is instrumental to guaranteeing the important freedoms Americans hold dear. In autocracies and dictatorships, the government declares itself as all-knowing and the sole determinant of what is best for people. Those nations may mandate a state religion, crack down on journalists who report inconvenient truths and silence dissident thoughts and actions. The First Amendment spares the United States from such an autocratic 1984 dystopia. And while the 23% of respondents who thought the First Amendment went too far is disappointingly high, it was still below the nearly half who said the same thing in 2002 following the September 11 terror attacks. In 2017, the 2017 edition of the survey turned up other disappointing numbers too on the role of media. When asked if it is important for our democracy that the news media act as a watchdog on government, an all-time high 29% said no. Those saying yes, 68%, constituted a record low. A majority of respondents also expressed support for preferring news from outlets that express similar political views rather than consuming a broad slate of media banning controversial speakers from college campuses and the government to hold American Muslims to higher scrutiny despite the religious liberty they are guaranteed. If the First Amendment doesn't protect unpopular speech, thoughts, religion, and viewpoints within reason for public safety and other purposes, nobody will. A truly free government that tips the balance toward favorites and winners has made losers of all its citizens. Americans' ability to worship freely and disagree with the government without fear of imprisonment, or worse, is only a dream in many parts of the world. The First Amendment is broad and far-reaching for precisely that reason, and therefore worthy of being cherished and defended by Americans of all ideologies.
Okay, and from the World Herald, here is an editorial with the headline, Missile Defense Needs a Boost. The commander of U.S. Strategic Command is giving a forceful push to strengthening the nation's missile defenses in the wake of the North Korean missile threat. It is sound advice. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has gone very fast in moving toward effective intercontinental missile capability. And we have to step up and go fast in response. Air Force General John Hyten said, the Stars and Stripes military newspaper Sunday. We are not going fast. We are so risk averse that we only test every 18 months. The best way to build rockets, the best way to move fast, is to build it, test it, instrument it, and learn from your failures. The Center for Strategic and International Studies, a think tank in Washington, D.C., recently released a detailed missile defense analysis by Thomas Carrico, a military technology specialist. Carrico described modernization of efforts underway and offered recommendations. Among them, build on U.S. military relationships with Japan and South Korea to jointly develop projects and create a coordinated regional missile defense system. Considerable cooperation is already in place. Also, pursue missile defense technologies that are more flexible and standardized and hence lower cost. Also, increase the number of the terminal high altitude area defense anti-missile batteries and improve the system's capability. The U.S. recently installed THAAD batteries in South Korea. And also then develop and deploy a layer of anti-missile sensors in space for quicker and earlier detection. Nebraska U.S. Senator Deb Fischer, who chairs the Senate Armed Services Committee's Subcommittee on Strategic Forces, scored the importance of missile defense and pointed to initiatives supported by the committee. Lawmakers in 2013 authorized long-range radar systems to improve the tracking and interception of North Korean missiles, and more recently supported increased funding for an interceptor system called the Ground-Based Mid-Course Defense Program, Fisher said. In its defense budget recommendations this year, the committee incorporated Fisher's proposals for additional missile defense funding. The North Korean threat warrants serious counter moves by the United States Stepped-up missile defense can make an important contribution. As Fisher says, keeping Americans safe is the first duty of our federal government.
Okay, here are a couple of letters from the Lincoln Journal-Star. The first one, tone down fireworks. Ah, my favorite time of the year, Independence Day. Redneck yahoos blowing stuff up just to blow it up all day into the night. No pretty lights, no soft sounds, just loud noise. The dogs go crazy. The neighborhood is a war zone for 3 days. Patriotism shines on. That was written by John Walker of Lincoln. And here's another letter. Shining city on the hill under threat. Ronald Reagan famously spoke of America as a beacon of hope and guidance to the world when he called it a shining city on a hill. With each new tweet and misguided policy, President Trump drags us into the muck and off that hilltop. Can you imagine President Bush criticizing the appearance of a female news anchor? Can you fathom President Obama creating a video wherein he attacks a news organization? It's unimaginable. At the conclusion of Watergate, strong-willed Republicans finally said enough and removed Nixon from office. I'm waiting for similar voices to emerge now. At times, Senator Sass has been outspoken, but I fear it's not enough. It seems that many Republicans have adopted the adage of, he may be a madman, but he's our madman, regarding Trump. If you would be outraged if President Obama or Hillary Clinton has said these same things, you should be equally outraged at Trump. This is bigger than party politics. This is about our democracy. As a moderate Democrat in a red state, I feel my voice is dismissed by our elected officials. But any Republican reading this in Nebraska, you have real power. Call our senators and representatives and tell them enough is enough. They will listen to you. Tell them to stand up against Trump's abuse of the press, women, minorities, and the environment. I know trolls will have a field day with this, but I know too that most Nebraskans are good people no matter how they vote. We have differences in how we view specific policies, but ultimately we need to stick together to protect the democratic process so we can find solutions to the problems facing us. We need the good people of Nebraska to stand up and voice these concerns so America can once again be that shining city on a hill. That was written by Tom Teagues of Lincoln.
All right, and here are some letters to the editor from the World Herald. The first one, the Garcia case, shows flaws of the death penalty. Anthony Garcia has been found guilty of murdering 4 people, including a child. But now his Omaha-based attorney has been suspended from practicing law in Nebraska while he completes continuing education requirements. His Chicago-based attorneys are barred from practicing law in the case without their Nebraska sponsor. And the Nebraska Commission on Public Advocacy has been appointed to help with the defense, which has spurred an appeal, but the state Supreme Court has refused to adjudicate the matter until Garcia is actually sentenced. The most likely scenario is that whatever decision is made, someone will appeal, and Garcia will be given a new sentencing hearing. Then the real process of appeal starts: cruel and unusual punishment, improper consideration of aggravating and mitigating factors, and on and on and on. And with the grandstanding Mata family representing Garcia, you can bet there will be plenty of appeals, full of theatrics and accusations against the state. There will be appeal after appeal, and the state will never get around to executing Garcia. If the governor and the people of Nebraska are serious about the death penalty, then let's make sure the administration of justice is swift. Otherwise, let's repeal the death penalty and spend the money on building parks and schools instead of lining the pockets of lawyers. That from Nathan Rice of Omaha. Lawmakers must provide answers. Lawmakers must provide answers. To Nebraska U.S. Senators Ben Sass and Deb Fisher and Representative Don Bacon, what is your economic strategy for small towns in Nebraska? whose hospitals and nursing homes will close should the Republican health care bill pass and they lose huge Medicaid dollars. While doing your calculations, don't forget to include tax dollars that health care workers will take with them when they leave the area. I am sure Nebraska mayors are anxious to hear your plans. That from Linda Smith of Omaha. And finally, don't let the Democrats define collusion. There has been a great deal of talk recently about collusion and opposition research in presidential campaigns. There's an easy way to distinguish the difference between the two. If a Republican campaign gets some dirt on its Democratic opponent, it's the result of some form of collusion. If a Democratic campaign gets some dirt on Republican opponents, it's the result of opposition research. That from Klaus P. Lindner of La Vista.
And I just have one more letter in the Lincoln Journal-Star. This is headlined as an open letter to Fortenberry. Dear Representative Fortenberry, what we've learned about President Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin, little though it is, and what we've learned about contacts between his campaign and Russian sources in recent days makes two things clear. First, the House of Representatives must act on the Senate bill that would prevent Trump from lifting the current sanctions on Russia. You and your colleagues must pressure the House leadership to bring this bill to a vote as quickly as possible, and then you must pass the bill. And number two, the House Judiciary Committee must begin the process of impeaching President Trump. We now know that his campaign actively sought the assistance of the Russian government to defeat Hillary Clinton. That is exactly the kind of high crime and misdemeanor the framers of the Constitution wanted to punish with impeachment. The question now is, do you and your colleagues have the courage to protect the United States, or should we all start learning Russian? That was written by John R. Bender from Lincoln.
Okay, here are some letters to Heloise containing some household hints as we move into the living and entertainment section. Dear Heloise, I have artificial flowers that have gotten a bit dusty over time, and I want to clean them rather than replace them. They were expensive, and the colors perfectly match my home. So how do I clean them? From Meg H. in Gastonia, North Carolina. Dear Meg, pour 2 cups of regular table salt into a clear plastic bag. Take the flowers one at a time and place the flower head in the bag of salt and shake it vigorously. This will remove the dust. Repeat this process for each flower. The leaves can be wiped down with a damp cloth. Dear Heloise, years ago my grandmother would go out into the garden with a pin after we'd gone to bed, and on a small watermelon or squash or young cucumber, she would scratch our names. As the vegetable grew, our names became more visible. She told us the garden elves had selected that particular vegetable just for us. So naturally, we ate it. That's a great way to get kids to eat their veggies. From Agnes D. in Ontario, Canada. Dear Agnes, you're right. That is a clever way to get kids to eat their veggies. And I personally have never heard that way before, to get kids to eat veggies. Dear readers, says Heloise, the fork originally had only 2 tines and was referred to as a split spoon. A shoemaker often is referred to as a cobbler, but actually a cobbler is a shoe repairman. An actual shoemaker is a cord wainer. How many emails are sent daily? About 160 million, of which 97% are believed to be spam. Eloise, I love our new home except for one thing. We have a separate shower and tub. The bathtub sits next to a huge plate glass window that lets in a lot of light, which I like, but doesn't offer any privacy. I don't want drapes or shutters on the window, so what can I do to keep the light but obscure the view into my home? From Patsy in Yuma, Arizona. Dear Patsy, yes, there are products online you might want to take a look at. Just type in window film coverings, and you'll find a whole range of manufacturers and various film styles to give you the privacy you want and yet let in the light. Dear Heloise, my brother-in-law made us a wedding gift of a wine rack that he crafted himself, and while it's lovely, it's really too big to use in our kitchen or dining room. I finally put it in the den, but instead of using it for wine storage, I roll up magazines and place them in the round holes where the bottles would normally have gone. Now, my husband is thinking of taking it to work with him to store blueprints. From Judy L. in Casper, Wyoming. Dear Patsy, what a great idea. I love to see people think up clever ways to use everyday objects or repurpose something and give it new life. Readers, do you have new uses for different items or clever ideas for things that might otherwise wind up in a landfill? From Heloise.
Okay, I've got John Roseman's column on children, living with children. And this headline today, dealing with vitamin N deficiency. I call it vitamin N. It is the word children need to hear most, but it is currently the word children hear least. It is arguably the most character building word in the English language, but then helping children achieve great things or creating the illusion that they are achieving great things has eclipsed helping children build strong character. That is unfortunate indeed, because high achievement alone does not produce solid character, but a person with solid character will always do his or her best. Children do not know what is in their own best interests. They are short-sighted, pleasure-seeking, impulsive, and instant gratification oriented. They have great difficulty realizing that pain often leads to gain, failure to accomplishment, and that putting off reward often results in even greater reward. The job, it is their primary job, in fact, of parents and other adult caregivers, is to determine and do what is in children's best interest. That sometimes means incurring wrath, which is one of a short list of reasons why adults should never, ever want to be liked by children. The fact that an adult knows he loves the child who momentarily hates him, loves the child enough to make the supreme sacrifice, which the child cannot grasp, and will not until he has children of his own, is sufficient. When people of my generation get together, excuse me, the conversation often gets around to what we see going on with today's parents. We share our observations with one another in large part because many, if not most of today's parents are not interested in our observations. They see their children with tunnel vision and cannot fathom that their preoccupation could possibly be a handicap to both themselves and their kids. Tunnel vision is, after all, a form of blindness. The above conversation always, without exception, comes down to one conclusion. Today's parents, despite their good intentions, are their own and their children's worst enemies. The so-called issues they are having with their kids are the logical result of their parenting behavior. They complain about these difficulties, but God help the boomer who points out, however diplomatically, that they are not their children, that they, not their children, are the problem. They argue with their children not because their children are argumentative, but because they explain themselves. Their children do not do what they are told because the parents in question do not tell, rather they suggest. Their children are petulant and ungrateful because they indulge. Their children have never learned to pay attention to adults or take adults seriously. Therefore, they disobey and are disrespectful, and so on. Perhaps the most ubiquitous of all contemporary parenting complaints is, "My child can't take no for an answer." It is the oral equivalent of, "My child won't eat broccoli." In both cases, it is the absence of what the child supposedly cannot take or eat that causes the child's aversion. The solution to a loathing of broccoli is broccoli, as in your dinner is 2 florets of broccoli. When you have eaten them, you may have ample portions of what the rest of us are having. Likewise, a child who cannot take no for an answer simply needs lots more of it. The best vitamins, after all, are those that are the hardest to swallow.
Okay, here is an article concerning the use of ethanol fuels, written by David Merrill, who is chairman of the Nebraska Corn Board, Steve Nelson, who is president of the Nebraska Farm Bureau, and Ted Free, who is president of Renewable Fuels Nebraska. Later this month, the U.S. Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works will consider legislation from U.S. Senator Deb Fischer of Nebraska called the Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act. Nebraska's energy and agricultural stakeholders wish to thank her for her efforts. Fisher's legislation is critical to E15 adoption and expansion in Nebraska and throughout the country. E15 is a clean-burning 15% ethanol blend, which is approved for all vehicles manufactured in 2001 or later. This renewable fuel is the most widely tested fuel ever. Through repeated trials, E15 has been shown to boost engine performance, increase horsepower, and run cleaner through engine valves, all without sacrificing fuel economy or vehicle performance. E15 also saves consumers money at the pump while reducing our demand for foreign oil. Despite the overwhelming benefits of this higher octane fuel, E15 causes confusion at the pump. Current EPA regulations limit the usage of E15 to flex fuel vehicles during the high ozone season, which is June 1 through September 15. The rest of the year, any vehicle 2001 or newer can use E15. However, E15 is well suited to be used throughout the year for all vehicles 2001 or newer, regardless of flex fuel status. The reason for the current limitation on E15 has to do with the Reid vapor pressure rating, which currently has a ceiling of 9 pounds per square inch. Measured alone, ethanol and gasoline are both below that threshold, but our most common ethanol blend, E10, rises above that number. E10 is a 10% ethanol blend, which comprises almost all of U.S. gasoline today. In 1990, an amendment to the Clean Air Act included waiver language for the sale of E10. By allowing the sale of E15 year-round for all 2001 or newer vehicles, confusion would be eliminated at the pump and consumers would have a choice. The choice to choose local, to help the environment, and save money in the process. Fisher understands the importance of correcting the RVP problem. We thank her for her unwavering support of our state and our ag industry. We look forward to working with her to ensure that Nebraska's ethanol industry continues to grow.
Okay, here's Amy Dickinson's column. Its headline today, Becoming a Landlord Ended the Friendship. Dear Amy, my husband and I rented our house to friends approximately 2 years ago for substantially below market rent. Shortly after they moved in, property values started going up, and we hinted that we would like to sell the property when they vacated it. About 6 months after their lease ended, we thought they were getting ready to move out. However, they broadsided us with news that the husband had cancer. We told them not to worry about moving at that point. We feel that we have been patient and understanding with them while they have made multiple major demands of us. Things came to a head when the wife demanded that we rewire the entire house after they had overloaded the circuit breaker with multiple space heaters. Fast forward another 6 months, and now they are not talking to us and have no plans to move out until next year at the earliest. We have taken a loss on the rent for nearly 2 years now, to the tune of almost $10,000. Regardless of the cancer issue, we need to give them notice to move out. What do you think? Are we being unreasonable and heartless? Signed, Catch 22. Dear Catch 22, your tenants are paying the rent And even though the rent is below market value, you set the amount. You should research the laws in your state, but according to my research, they are tenants at will, which means that they have stayed on beyond the end of their lease with your permission. They are basically renting month to month and would have to move as long as you gave them 30 days notice in writing. You have a responsibility to provide a safe home while they are renting, and they are responsible for any damage they do to your home. They can demand anything they want to demand, but you don't have to make changes unless these are necessary repairs. If they are plugging in multiple space heaters, it sounds like your furnace may need servicing. Because of your tenants' health problems, the compassionate thing to do would be for you to give them plenty of notice before they are required to vacate the property, perhaps by the first of the year. This will give them time to find another place to live. Their move-out date should be your choice, not theirs. Consult an attorney to put this notice in writing to make sure you are fulfilling your responsibilities as a landlord so that you can treat your tenants fairly and also reclaim your own rights and property. Next, dear Amy, every summer I face the same minor dilemma. When invited to someone's house for a vacation type overnight, what are the basic guidelines for being a good guest? Signed, frequent guest. Dear guest, good overnight guests bring something with them and present it on their arrival, such as freshly baked edibles, pretty linen dish towels, a lightly scented candle, or something that represents your own home region, such as a local wine, cider, honey, or maybe syrup. In a recent article in the Washington Post, my friend and great guest, Jura Concius, suggested that good guests step up and help with chores. Don't sit there and expect to be served like at a restaurant. Hosts appreciate your clearing plates from the table, emptying the dishwasher, taking out the trash, and stripping the bed when you leave. Set up the coffee for the next day. Concius also suggests that being a good guest requires simply being on your best behavior while you're in someone else's home. Keep your guest room clean and make the bed each day. Don't comment negatively about things you don't like or which are unfamiliar. Be kind toward your host's pets and children. Be interested in your surroundings. A good guest expresses gratitude along the way, thanking their host for meals and excursions and reciprocating by treating their host to a meal. And a good guest thanks the host promptly, warmly, and appropriately once she arrives back home. And finally, dear Amy, I want to thank S for telling the story of being conned by an online scammer who was masquerading as a suitor. I also appreciated your response that the emotions she was feeling were real, even though she had never met the man in real life. I had a similar experience and want to add my voice of support. Signed, Been There. Dear Been There, anyone who has tried online matching can see how this type of involvement could happen.
Okay, from the World Herald, here is an article for those of you who might remember riding on some of the train passenger cars of the past. For 105 years, Union Pacific trains carried travelers across the United States, but passenger service came to a halt in 1971 as airline and interstate travel continued to grow. Next month, passengers will once again have the chance to ride the rails on a UP train. Council Bluffs Union Pacific Railroad Museum will take passengers from Omaha to Columbus, Nebraska, and back in historic Union Pacific train cars. The Union Pacific Museum Special will depart at 8:30 a.m. August 13 from the Durham Museum, 801 South 10th Street. Tickets are on sale now. Fares start at $250 for coach seating. Proceeds from the ride will benefit the UP's nonprofit museum, said Patricia LaBounty, Museum and Collections Manager. Union Pacific doesn't offer rides on its main line very often, she said. The fundraiser will allow modern passengers the rare chance to experience what it was like to rocket through Nebraska by rail. The railroad's 11 heritage passenger cars will be pulled by a yellow E9 Streamliner locomotive, like the one on display near TD Ameritrade Park during the College World Series. The passenger cars were in regular use decades ago, she said. Since then, many have been updated with amenities like air conditioning and outfitted with luxury interiors. Some cars are older than others and feature more of their original fixtures. These are premium passenger cars. This isn't a bus. They are beautiful, LaBounty said. Each car in the trains consist has its own character, like the city of Los Angeles, a diner car built in 1949, and the Missouri River Eagle, a coach converted into a dome dining car in the mid-1980s. Riders will be able to move about the train, visiting other cars depending on their ticket class. A hospitality car will offer food and beverages for all ticket classes, LaBounty said. For more information and to purchase tickets, visit uptraintix.com or contact the Omaha World Herald.
Okay, here's a little business news. Warren wants Wells Fargo purge is the headline. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat from Massachusetts, called Thursday for Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen to remove Wells Fargo and Company board members who presided over the bank when it opened millions of accounts without customers' authorization. Wells Fargo agreed in September to pay $185 million to settle investigations into its sales practices by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and Los Angeles City Attorney Mike Feuer, I think it is. The bank did not admit any wrongdoing, but said its employees had opened millions of checking, saving, and credit card accounts that customers never authorized. That included more than 12,000 in Nebraska. Warren wrote to Yellen last month urging the Fed, which oversees Wells Fargo's holding company, to take the step. The Fed has not done so. How could removal of these board members not be warranted, given the facts that we already know? Warren asked. Yellen said she could not discuss confidential information about the Fed's supervision of the bank. She indicated no decision has been made on the board's fate as the Fed continues to look into the matter. The behavior that we saw was egregious and unacceptable, and it is our job to understand what the root causes are of these failures, Yellen said. She said the Fed needs to conduct a full investigation to understand the root causes of the problems at Wells Fargo. Yellen said the central bank is prepared to take appropriate enforcement actions, but did not say whether that action would include removal of any bank directors. Despite a concerted effort against some of the bank's board members, all of them were re-elected at its shareholder meeting in April, although 4 of them got less than 60% support, including Cynthia Milligan, former dean of the University of Nebraska Lincoln College of Business Administration.
Okay, here's an article with the headline, OPPD brings more wind power. A new wind farm in Wayne County will boost wind power to about 40% of the Omaha Public Power District's electricity generation by the end of 2019. That's up from less than 20% in 2016. OPPD President and Chief Executive Tim Burke said Thursday during the utility's monthly Board of Directors meeting that Florida-based Next Era Energy Resources will build a 160-megawatt wind farm. OPPD will purchase the electricity generated. The project will boost the utility's total renewable generation to more than 1,000 megawatts, which includes hydropower, OPPD purchases from the Western Area Power Administration, and landfill gas it extracts from the Douglas County landfill. Renewables made up about 400 megawatts of OPPD's generation power last year. The Shoals Wind Energy Center in Wayne County will mark OPPD's first contract with NextEra, which is also working on a 90-megawatt project in Webster County in southern Nebraska. We're not only diversifying our wind generation across the region, but diversifying across different developers as well, Burke said. Late last year, OPPD started getting electricity from the 400-megawatt Grand Prairie Wind Farm in Holt County. That project is owned by Des Moines-based BHE Renewables, a Mid-American Energy subsidiary, and was the largest wind farm built in the U.S. in 2016. The Omaha Electric Utility plans to make another wind energy addition this year as it seeks to replace a portion of the capacity lost when it shut down the nuclear plant at Fort Calhoun last year. Some directors and groups representing ratepayers voiced their desire Thursday to add even more renewable generation. They included a coalition of sustainability managers and professors from local colleges, including the University of Nebraska Medical Center, Creighton University, and the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Meanwhile, the damage toll continues to climb from the June 16 storm that downed hundreds of OPPD transmission and distribution poles and left some 76,500 of its customers without power, in some cases for up to 6 days. OPPD officials have increased the estimate of the storm's damage to $15 million, up from preliminary estimates of $10 million projected in the immediate aftermath of the severe weather system that spawned tornadoes and brought with it hurricane-force winds. The entire project, which costs $1.2 million, is expected to be complete in September. Employment at the plant, 20 miles north of Omaha, has increased slightly since last month's update. Because of departures within the site's security detail, OPPD has been hiring to fill those positions and now has 416 people working at the plant, up from 413 a month ago.
Okay, let's move on to some sports today. And I've got a feature story here that is a headline, Finding Her Way. Noor Ahmed was a 13-year-old Folsom, California 7th grader when she decided to start wearing a hijab. At an age when fitting in typically is the top priority, she decided honoring her Muslim faith was more important. It was an emotional decision even at her age. The American-born daughter of Egyptian immigrants knew it would have consequences. Ahmed guessed she would lose friends in an increasingly anti-Muslim environment, and relationship dynamics would change. And she was correct. Some people just said, she's not one of us anymore, she said, of those who turned their backs. In her time of turmoil, the First Tee of Greater Sacramento and the golf community stepped up. Before her initial First Tee outing, after her decision, Ahmed was nervous about the reaction her headscarf and public covering of her arms and legs might elicit. No one seemed to notice, she said. No one seemed to care. I was just the same kid. I was just newer. It was the best response. It was so First Tee. When Ahmed, an 18-year-old graduate of Vista Del Lago High School, begins classes next month on a golf scholarship at the University of Nebraska, she will become one of the first accomplished First Tee alumni. Her long climb started at the bottom. Painfully shy as a little girl, she was bullied and ignored throughout elementary school. As she grew older, classmates would befriend her while seeking assistance with homework assignments and then shun the nerd when they no longer needed her help. She thought of herself as unworthy of friendship, her self-esteem non-existent. Her father, Tamer, and her mother, Hoda, came from athletic backgrounds and exposed Ahmed and her younger brother, Yosef, to all sorts of sports. But for Ahmed, swimming, tennis, gymnastics, and t-ball didn't stick. Her parents enrolled her in the local First Tee chapter when she was 9. For 18 months, she completed on TFTG's junior tour, but only on the program's fringes without participating in the life skills session that precedes every tournament. She was too shy, she said. Her father encouraged her to attend, but sensitive to her anxiety, didn't insist. One day before a tournament at Winchester, when Ahmed was 11, First Tee Executive Director Angie Dixon, seeing Ahmed's reticence, took her hand and changed her life. Ahmed recounted the moment during the speech at the Congressional Breakfast in Washington, D.C. on April 26th, National Golf Day. Angie took me by the hand and told me we would do the lesson together, Ahmed told a room of political and golf power players. She may never know or understand how in that very moment she changed my life. She noticed the shy, introverted girl that no one had noticed before, and by her small action told me I was part of a group and that I was wanted. My journey with the First Tee began there. It helped mold me in ways I would have never imagined. Dixon cried when she saw a video of the speech. She didn't learn about it until weeks later. She had no idea about her impact on Ahmed. And while Dixon doesn't remember the moment, going to another page, doesn't remember the moment to which she referred, she is not surprised by the end result. The First Tee, with its 9 core values, family feel and support system of caring adults and mentors, has a way of building confidence, especially in girls. I've seen it time and time again with young ladies who come into our program, Dixon said. They won't shake your hand or look you in the eye. Then they come out on the other end, speaking in front of the people and exhibiting much greater confidence. This is a much longer story, but it refers to the fact that she is going to be a member of Nebraska's golf team in the future.
Okay, and an article from the Wimbledon Tennis Tournament is about Venus Williams trying for her 6th title. All these years later, Wimbledon still brings out the best in Venus Williams. With her latest display of gutsy serving and big hitting, Williams beat Johanna Konta 6-4 and 6-2 on Thursday to reach her 9th title match at the All England Club and first since 2009. At 37, Williams is the oldest Wimbledon finalist since Martina Navratilova was the 1994 runner-up at that age. Williams also stopped Konta's bid to become the first woman from Britain in 40 years to win the country's Grand Slam tournament. I couldn't have asked for more, but I'll ask for a little more. One more win would be amazing, Williams said. It won't be a given, but I'm going to give it my all. She will be seeking her 6th Wimbledon championship and 8th Grand Slam singles trophy overall. Her most recent came in 2008 when she defeated her younger sister, Serena, for the title at the All England Club. A year later, she lost the final to Serena. In the time since, Williams revealed that she was diagnosed with Sjögren's syndrome, which can sap energy and cause joint pain. As time went on, there were questions about whether she might retire, especially after a half-dozen first-round losses at major tournaments. But she kept going, and lately has returned to winning. Her resurgence began in earnest at Wimbledon a year ago, when she made the semifinals. Australian Open in January. Williams reached the finals, where she lost to, yes, you guessed it, her sister. Serena is off the tour for the rest of this year because she is pregnant. I missed her so much before this match, and I was like, I just wish she was here. And I wish she could do this for me, Williams said with a laugh. And I was like, no, this time you have to do it for yourself. So here we are. On Saturday, the 10th-seeded American will participate in her second Grand Slam final of the season and 16th of her career, this time against 14th-seeded Garbine Muguruza of Spain. She knows how to play, especially Wimbledon finals. Muguruza, the 2015 Wimbledon runner-up and 2016 French Open champion, said about Williams, "It's going to be a historic final again." Venus says, "I'll have to ask Serena for some pointers. Serena's always in my corner, and usually it's her in these finals, so I'm trying to best represent the Williamses as much as I can."
Okay, here is a Nebraska football story. NU secondary meshing with staff. Let's take a drive and make 6 points along the way. Look for previous driving for 6 blogs at huskerextra.com. Number 1, start off by heading back in Lamar Jackson's direction. I wrote a story. This, by the way, is written by Brian Christopherson. I wrote a story about the Husker true sophomore cornerback a couple Sundays back. Jackson was quite candid about his experiences during his true freshman year. Obviously, as a reporter, I liked that openness, but I also liked it because you can tell he's real with himself. He admits he thought he'd come in here and set the world on fire. He found out quickly it's not that easy and has had to rededicate himself to going harder. I've stopped trying to finesse workouts and finesse the system. Just lead and just be great, Jackson said, what everybody wants me to be. He has some good people in his life and a strong relationship with his cornerbacks coach, Dante Williams. But remember, Williams wasn't around here until early December, and Jackson said it's hard for family to know exactly what he's going through as a player since they haven't been through it themselves. I didn't have a dad or someone that played college football saying, this is what's going to happen your freshman year. So be ready, Jackson said. So I took that on myself as a young 18-year-old boy. You start saying, I'm not the best, I'm not starting, I'm not playing this game. That kind of just broke me. That's why I say the maturity was the biggest, going to another page, was the biggest thing. I just grew up throughout the year until now, and I feel like I'm at a good place with my head in the right spot and everything. Number 2, Jojo Doman is someone who certainly got a lot out of a short time around the late Bob Elliott, who passed away this past weekend at age 64. Obviously, it's under the circumstances no one wants, but Scott Booker now steps into that role as Nebraska's safeties coach. That's the 3rd safeties coach Doman has had at NU after just a year on campus. Doman said there hasn't been a lot of time to get together with Booker since he stepped into the new role. Coaches are out of the offices coming up for a breath of air this week before the grind picks up again. But Booker has texted players reminding them to get their work in and that he's thinking about them. Number 3, while it's easy to roll your eyes at postseason watch lists, Drew Brown showing up on the Lou Groza Award watch list got me thinking, which some would say is an accomplishment. For one, Brown has all the goods to be a legit contender for that award. This is a guy who hit 12 of 14 field goals last year, and one of the misses was a 57-yarder in a tricky wind that Mike Riley took the blame for, making him take after the game. He's also a very, very good kickoff guy, which shouldn't be taken for granted. It also reminded me of some interviews a few media members conducted at the bowl site in the Bay Area prior to the Foster Farms Bowl in 2015. Drew Brown and Sam Foles both came over and took questions as the rest of the team finished to practice one day. It was loose and fun. I remember holding a coffee in my hand as we talked to Foltz. The interview sticks out for obvious reasons after the tragic loss of Foltz last summer. But it's also what they talked about that day. Both Brown and Foltz had discussed the idea of Brown winning the Groza Award, while Foltz wanted the Ray Guy Award. We actually told each other, hey, we want to be the first punter and kicker at the same school, winning both those awards in the same year, Brown said. I would bet Brown still thinks about winning that Groza Award, not just for himself, but the punter and friend he was so close to. As Foltz said that day, I think if people aren't laughing at your goals, then you're not doing it right. That's quite a quote from quite a guy.
Okay, in Major League Baseball, here's a little preview of what we might expect in the second half of the season. Houston, we have a problem, a math problem. Only 5 playoff spots are available in the American League, and almost all of the American League's 15 teams have a shot at one. One of the postseason berths seems bound to go to the Astros, who have done well enough to avoid this impending mess. After that, at the All-Star break, Houston is 10 games clear of Boston, the second-place team in the American League, and Boston is 11 games ahead of Oakland and Chicago, the last-place teams in the league. 14 teams separated by 11 games, and the wild card race is even more, well, wild, not including the 5 teams that would make the playoffs if they started today. And thank goodness they don't, because that would deprive us of an entertaining second-half chase. There are 7 clubs within 5 games of the final spot. Elsewhere in the National League, the closest division race is in the Central, but the most intriguing race is in the West, which boasts 3 of the major's top 5 teams by winning percentage: Los Angeles, Arizona, and Colorado. But in the American League, almost everyone has a shot for the moon. Now we'll watch and wait until October and see which 5 teams reach it.
Okay, just a little bit of time to tell you. Hickstein claims girls amateur tourney title. Chadron's Ricky Hickstein shot a 3 over par 74 for the second day in a row to finish with a 148 total and win the 17th Nebraska Girls Amateur Championship at Indian Trails Country Club in Beamer. After 3 early bogeys, Hickstein played her final 14 holes in even par to clinch the victory. She was 3 shots clear of Elkhorn's Megan Whitaker, who won the 2016 Nebraska Girls Match Play Championship. And I see the old clock on the wall says we are at 12 o'clock. It's time for us to clear out of here, and we thank you for listening and hope you will again.
And this is David Radliff, wishing you a good weekend.
And thank you very much for that, David Radliff, and Mike Garrity for coming in today and reading from the Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. And we appreciate that. Have a wonderful weekend. Try to stay as cool as possible. And just remember that comes from each and every one of us here at the
Not too bad today.
Network.
Yeah, it's going to get
Tuned to
nasty.
the Radio Talking Book Network in Nebraska.
So are you still filling in for the foreseeable future? Or?
Well, I think I'm going to do a few times yet.
You with the cooperation of KIOS
Come in.
in Omaha and statewide through the facilities
Have a live
in
interview.
Okay,
So
we're
you
out of
guys
here.
skedaddle.
Oh, we're out of
You
here.
guys both sounded so well. Love your voices. Mary
Mary
Underwood is a speech pathologist.
for Jane
So she
Nielsen.
listened to your voices. This is Dave
For
and
this
Mike.
week's community
Great voices.
conversations.
Oh, thanks.
So
Well,
we'll
thank
get
you.
that set up.
Thanks for
Here's
coming.
Chad Atkins and the entertainer.
Bye
Guys
now.
have a great weekend.
You too.
Stay cool. You can sit there. There's nobody in here. It's not a big store. It's kind of warm. You can adjust. Mike, we also, if you look behind you, we have a YouTube channel. And 3 days a week. We're not on now, I think, but they had the other stuff on. They had it on 3 days a week. They usually, I don't think we have our own channel. That's not true. We have a volunteer that does that and then puts them up on YouTube.
Just wanting to check.
We're ready.
Is it ready? Okay.
We are. But go ahead and let that run. Go ahead and let it run out. Or get close if you don't mind.
Yes, just 2 minutes.
And then you can introduce us.
Your guest names are very unique. Well, you'll introduce her because that's always the most.
And then it's Mary Underwood.
Should I leave the door open?
I'm just going to leave it open. Yes. The guys were standing up and they're going now. So, yes, it
It
is.
might help you breathe a little better.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
So if I'm too loud, not loud enough.
He just.
Oh, that's right. That's why you have a sound guy, a sound board.
Yep, and you'll hear him. Let's see, is this on? Yeah, we can hear him. He'll talk a little bit and do an opening. He'll do an introduction, and then I do an introduction, and he'll do a close.
Excellent. How are you feeling now?
I'm feeling better because I like doing this.
Good song.
And that was a live appearance with Chet Atkins on the TV show, I think back in the 70s. It was called The Entertainer. And we have now our guests and Jane Nielsen in the studio standing by for this week's Community Conversations. So let's turn it over now to our executive director. Here is Jane Nielsen.
Thank you very much, Paul. You're awesome. Thank you for that very nice introduction. It is Friday and our live community conversation segment. And today we have a very special guest. Mary has helped me with my voice, and it's kind of funny because today my throat's not doing very well. I think I have a sinus infection, but Mary is a speech pathologist, Mary Underwood with CHI. And Mary, welcome, and thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you, Jane, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here.
We are very happy to have you. And I know because of what I've learned from Mary, not only to help my voice, but her personal life is so interesting. So I think our listeners will really enjoy hearing from you today. I always like our listeners to know who our guest is because we are being welcomed into their home, wherever they may be, across the state or around the world. We have listeners in Moscow, actually. But anyway, so I'd like you, Mary, to tell them a little bit about yourself and as an introduction so they know who they have as a guest in their home today.
My name is Mary Underwood. I am from Minnesota, actually. I grew up there, and when I was 18, I came to Omaha to go to Creighton. And one of the reasons was because my aunt and uncle and 7 cousins live in Omaha, and one of my 7 cousins is visually impaired. And if he's listening today, hi, cuz. So my bachelor's degree is from Creighton, and then in speech pathology. And I continued on to get my master's degree from the University of Iowa. And I'm a lifelong learner, so I'm also the world's oldest college student. I spent 3 summers at St. John's University in Minnesota taking voice courses. And last summer I was at Shenandoah University taking 3 voice courses. So you're never too old, and there's always something to learn, and it keeps us young.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. What about your family today? Like are you married? Do you have children, Mary?
I have 3 grown sons, and I have 4 grandchildren. And I'm passing on my passion for music and voice, as my parents gave me many opportunities in music and playing instruments growing up all through high school. And I've continued that passion for voice into my career as a speech pathologist. For many years, I have done it all. I started out in the schools. My youngest student was 17 months old, and he had a trach, and all he could do was squeak. So I helped him and his mom learn how to communicate with words rather than squeaks. My oldest patient to this day is 104 years old, and he was having difficulty swallowing. So I started out working with children preschool through high school, and then I changed to adults, and I found there's no difference between children and adults. They just wear bigger shoes. So over my career, I have worked for profit organizations, nonprofit organizations. I've worked in skilled nursing facilities from the east coast of Nebraska to the west coast of Nebraska when I was a traveling manager. I spent 13 years in management. And I have liked every position I've ever had. I worked right across the street at Emmanuel Hospital, and then I transferred to Lakeside Hospital because my aunt and uncle with the 7 children were living at Lakeside Independent Living, and I could be closer to go visit them.
Oh, that's nice. That is wonderful. I had no idea you could work with children that young. And what a blessing that must have been to that child's parents and to that child to be able to communicate.
Right, there are birth to 3 years old programs. So, and parents need to know that, because on occasion I will get calls from doctors to see if their preschool or young child can get services. And they're very surprised to hear that the schools provide this.
Mm-hmm.
They have a birth to 3 program, and the speech therapist goes to their home.
Wow.
And works with the child.
I guess I have 2 nephews over in Iowa that are special needs. And I remember they did have occupational therapists that came out to them at quite a young age. I don't think I knew, though, that, and I don't know, I'll have to ask my sister-in-law now if they did things with their speech as well. And both of my sons took, what is it you take, speech therapy. Prior to going into kindergarten, they were identified with a little bit of a speech problem and started in preschool, and both of them are fine today. So a little bit of personal experience with that before my own talking too much throat problems.
Well, and I had the same experience with my sons being a speech pathologist, which is the same as speech therapist. They're interchangeable.
Oh, okay.
But I started working with all 3 of my sons when they were 2 years old. They had lisps, a frontal lisp. And so, and to this day, the 3 of them do not remember me working with their speech because we made it fun. We
Sure.
made it a game. I'd sit them on the counter at eye level as we'd play S-word games as I worked on their speech. My second son was premature, so he had a lisp, and he had an F for TH substitution. He had a vowel R distortion, and he had a Y for an L. And today he's an electrical engineer. And has no idea I worked on his speech. And my third son, he had a lisp also, and I played with them and their speech in a fun way for 3 years because I was determined they were not going to go to school with a lisp in kindergarten. So Patrick, my third one, his S sound was just perfect before kindergarten, but I was always having to say, oops, that's your old way, show me your new way. So I made a deal with my 5-year-old son, and I said, if I don't have to say, oops, that's your old way for 2 full weeks, you and your friends will have a pizza party. Well, I never heard that lisp again. And he's now 32 years old, and I still haven't heard that lisp, and that pizza party paid off.
Wow. Well, I think that will help so many people, our listeners out there, if they've got a child or a grandchild or niece or nephew that, or anyone they know of that has that issue, then they can contact us. How long did you have to work with your sons then? Is it very long when you start that young with them?
Well, when you make it a game and when you make it fun, it took them 2 to 3 years. It's just, and I should probably mention also, my oldest son had non-fluent speech when he was 2 years old, which is normal non-fluency.
What is non-fluency?
Non-fluency, some people, if it becomes a speech deficit, it's stuttering. But everyone has non-fluent speech. If you listen to me talk, you will hear ums and ahs and starts and stops, and that's non-fluent speech. And if television casters, everyone has non-fluent speech. It's considered normal. And my son had non-fluent speech when he was 2, because if you think about it, a 2-year-old is very short. An adult is tall. The only way they can learn a very complex English language is by listening. They can see your knees, and that's about it. So because our language has irregular verbs and noun-verb agreement and irregular plurals, as a child is putting a sentence together, they can start and stop because they're trying to figure out where the verb goes and where the object goes. And my son, in our neighborhood at that time, there were older children who would imitate and laugh when my son was talking and showed normal non-fluencies in his speech. So I never addressed that issue. My son to this day, who he just turned 38, he's a public speaker now, has no idea his speech was non-fluent. And what I would do is I would just be a role model for him. If he would come in and say, Mom, Johnny just ran across the street, I would say to him, Johnny just ran across the street. Well, let's go look. Is he okay? I would repeat in a very relaxed, grammatically correct sentence whatever he said, and the non-fluencies became less and less. So even though the older children in the neighborhood were laughing and imitating him, I never confronted that. I would repeat what he said in a natural, correct, easy manner. Slowly over time, his non-fluencies continued to be normal non-fluencies. It never developed into stuttering.
I see. And so he didn't know he was doing something wrong. You didn't correct him.
No.
You just restated what he said back to him in the proper way.
Correct. And that's what I did with their lisps and their vowel R distortions. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Jane, because when I talk with parents, I tell them, when it comes to speech and voice, there's no correct way, incorrect way. If I say you're doing it right, that implies they're doing something wrong. If I say they're doing something incorrect or correctly, that implies they were doing something incorrectly. I prefer the words, show me your new way. Oops, that's your old way. That does not imply wrong or bad, right or wrong. It's just, oops, that's your old way. Show me your new way. And so they never get the feeling they're doing something wrong because, and again, it's important that children, as they're learning voice and language growing up, that their parents and the people important to them are listening to what they say, not how they say it. So how they say it is performance. So it's very important. A child can get very tense and they don't understand you're speaking incorrectly, do it over again, or think before you talk. The only message they get is, oh, I'm doing something wrong, I have to try harder. And the trying harder is what runs them into trouble. So all I did was I would rephrase what my children said, whether it was a lisp or non-fluent speech, in a nice, easy speech manner with a smile on my face. And that's why it would take 3 years, because they never realized I was going through the back door to work with them.
And you weren't really having them practice things like you might do with a client.
Well, once they're school age, the way the schools are run now, if a child has a speech deficit or difficulty with voice and it hasn't naturally corrected itself by third grade, then they qualify for speech therapy. If the child has multiple problems, they can qualify in kindergarten or even as preschoolers. But if it's just a lisp, that can self-correct. If it hasn't corrected by third grade, then they contact the speech therapist.
Oh, very interesting. Do you do any teaching, Mary?
Well, that's interesting too. I do have a home office as well as I work at Lakeside Hospital outpatient therapy, where I specialize in voice. And I feel like I'm teaching all day long and I'm learning all day long. My patients are my best teachers. I learn from them.
But you don't teach in a classroom, like teach.
I did.
You did.
Yes,
You did.
I did for 11 years. Well, as a speech pathologist. I've
Okay.
always been a speech pathologist, preschool through high school.
But have you taught fellow speech pathologists, or that's what you taught?
Right. Well, when I went to the University of Iowa to get my master's degree, to get a permanent professional teaching certificate in Iowa, I had to train student teachers. So I have been on a panel at UNO, a speech therapy panel, and I have trained student teachers.
Okay, very, very interesting. Can you think back to how did you get interested in that line of work? I mean, did it come from your music in the family that led you to speech pathology?
I think so, because my mother's family came from Ireland and they were very musical. So I'm half of my mother. I don't have her talent, but I have even a better gift. She gave me the passion for music and for voice. That was her greatest gift. My dad was tone deaf. So I tell people I'm half and half. I'm half tone deaf and I'm half musical. But when I was at Creighton, I started out in education. At one time, I wanted to be a high school teacher. And back then, things haven't changed. It seemed like teaching was becoming largely disciplining students and teaching them right and wrong and respect and morals. And I just wanted to teach. So at Creighton, I discovered a program in speech pathology. And I thought, if I go into speech therapy, people will be seeking me out. People will be asking for my assistance, and I'll be able to get outcomes that may even improve quality of life, and I won't have to be disciplining. So I changed from education to speech therapy as a major, but I have 2 minors, one in education and one in psychology, and I use them all every day.
Sure. You have such a fabulous background, Mary. You just fascinate me, and I'm excited to learn even more about you. What are some of the things that you'd like to share with our listeners, maybe common everyday things they can do if they're suffering from a sore throat like I am?
Don't talk, Jane. Well, about 7 years ago, I spent most of my career doing it all as a speech therapist. We work with children in articulation. We work with non-fluencies. We work with traumatic brain injuries. We work with swallowing disorders. We work with strokes. We work with neurological progressive diseases that affect communication, like ALS and Parkinson's and MS. So after many years of doing it all, I decided to specialize in voice. And that was about 8 years ago. I started traveling the country, and going to conferences for ENTs, ear, nose, and throat doctors, and speech pathologists for people who are having difficulty in their voices. And that's also why I ended up at St. John's University and Shenandoah University, because voice is really a large umbrella of disorders. I not only specialize and work with singers, I work with public speakers, I work with teachers, and the interesting thing is teachers are the #1 vocal abusers in the country. And I spent 11 years in the schools, and I can understand that. Teachers sacrifice their voices over the noise of students. And the worst users are music teachers, and that makes me sad. They have more difficulty with their voices than even teachers, because not only are they teaching all day long, but they're singing, and they're singing in church, and they're singing in community theater. They're very high vocal users, and they can run into difficulty with their voices. I talked with one teacher. She'd been a high school teacher for 14 years, and she was so discouraged with the difficulties with her voice that she was considering giving up teaching. And that's when I really go to work, because we don't want to lose our good teachers.
Yeah.
So I advocate for them. And since we're talking about teachers, the #1 vocal abusers in the country, the first thing that I work toward is getting them voice amplification in the classroom, so that they can use, so they're not pushing their voices all day long, because Johnny in the back row just dropped his pencil box and Susie is giggling and rummaging through her books. So I will even ask for doctor's orders. This teacher needs amplification in the classroom. And I have handouts on that the teacher can give the principal on the importance of saving the teacher's voice. That's my #1 go-to. And then posting classroom rules. Day one of the school year, the students need to know the rules, that this teacher will not speak over the noise of children. And the one thing I really enjoy in working with teachers are, you give a teacher a problem and they're very creative.
Mm-hmm.
I had one teacher who had these beautiful chimes in her classroom, and she would just play the chimes, and that rule was on the whiteboard saying, if you hear the chimes, this teacher will not talk until you're quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And it also was great for peer pressure, because Charlie can say, Colleen, be quiet. We won't get to recess because our teacher is not talking unless we're quiet. So
Right.
Classroom rules are important. And I've also worked with classroom rules for ballet instructors.
Oh.
So it's not just for young children, it's for high school teachers and any teacher who's having their difficulty with their voice. And #3 on my list is water's your best friend, and both Jane and I are sitting here with our water to hydrate your voice. Hydration is extremely important in voice, because the vocal folds, and that's the same thing as vocal cords, are the second smallest muscles in your body. And muscles that are dry are prone to injury, whether you're an athlete, a sports athlete, or a vocal athlete. Your muscles have to be hydrated, so that, for example, Jane's throat is sore, that it heals more quickly because it's hydrated. So, and then with teachers, delegate talking tasks. Music teachers, have section leaders in the choir, have them deal with the rules of the day, and so that the teacher can save her voice. Team teaching is also another great way. Second grade teachers, I'll teach your math class if you teach my English class, and then they give each other vocal rest. And then I'll have teachers record lessons. If they're going to teach 6th graders all day long, record the lesson with one 6th grade class and then play it for the next 6th grade class to save their voices. Laryngitis is the #1 reason teachers miss school. So when you have laryngitis, that's when the sign goes on the whiteboard, my voice cannot come to you, you must come to your teacher. Do not talk through laryngitis. And then upper respiratory infections need to be dealt with. And I look, when I evaluate a person who's having difficulty with their voice, I look at the medications they're taking. I make sure they're taking their medications correctly. Acid reflux can take away a singer's voice, and it can affect a speaker's voice. It can affect anyone. So I look at their medications. I see if they're dehydrating, then you have to rehydrate. I see if they're taking their medication correctly too, especially if it's acid reflux medication and if they're taking a thyroid medication. There are protocols so that these are two medications that have to be taken correctly on an empty stomach. So many of my patients take them together because they both have to be on an empty stomach, and that is actually not correct.
Did you read my file to remind yourself who you were talking to today?
Right. Yes, if you're on a thyroid medication and acid reflux medication, they have to be taken 4 hours apart on an empty stomach. And many, as I get to know my patients, I find that they often take them together because no one ever explained it to them. So
it was maybe a year ago now that it was a new notice on my thyroid medication that said that. And
really?
Yeah. And
that's
so
excellent.
Yes. But then when you said it, I was really surprised because it's like, wow, I stopped doing that because I did the same thing. I had 2 or 3 medications. I took them all in the morning. And so I went in, and this is good advice for anybody. Take your medications or the list in to your pharmacist and ask them when the best time. And it's really kind of funny because the pharmacist that helped me had to actually look up some. They kind of thought, but they said, let me clarify this. And, because everything's different. But the things you learn all the time.
That's right.
It's amazing.
And what led me to really taking a look at medications, and for example, if you're on a high blood pressure medication, that's going to dehydrate your body cells. So then you rehydrate. 64 ounces of water is what is recommended for any adult. If you're a high vocal user like Jane and I need more than 64 ounces of water a day. But a doctor will tell you that if your urine is pale to clear, you're hydrated. If it's yellow or darker, you're not hydrated. So you kind of have a measuring stick all day long. And I tell my patients that you're made out of water. You're not made out of coffee or lemonade. You need, liquids are good for you, but you're made out of water. And also, if you're having difficulty with your voice, I'll ask if you add anything to your water. There are some additives, energy drinks, and things that are very high in acid. So plain water. If you really want flavor, you can add cucumber slices to your water. If you miss sweetness, you can add chunks of watermelon. And then when the water's gone, you get to eat the watermelon. It's your reward, and then you fill your glass back up again. So hydration is very important to muscles that are the size of your fingernail. And not only are the vocal folds your speaking and singing muscles, but they also clear your throat, which is very hard on them. They breathe for you. They are the doorway to your airway. They swallow for you. They close when you swallow so you don't choke. So 24/7, your entire life, these tiny muscles are working for you because you breathe in and out in your sleep, and they're open and relaxed when you breathe in and when you breathe out. You swallow in your sleep, so they close. You may talk in your sleep. So I tell my patients, if you don't care about eating or breathing or drinking or singing or talking, ignore these little muscles. And so hydrating not only is so healthy for your vocal folds, but if you think about it, dry muscles are prone to injury. Well, your brain is a muscle. So just think of how well our brains would work if that muscle was well hydrated, how well your heart would work, which is a muscle, if it's well hydrated, and your lungs. It's not just your arms and legs. All of you works better with hydration. And that's one thing when I do evaluations, I can quote almost every patient I see. How much plain water do you drink a day? Not enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think about athletes too, that no matter what they do, run or play tennis or football or whatever they do, how important it is for them to be hydrated. So think about your muscles also, like, think about sprained ankles and torn ligaments in your knees and all those things. I wonder how much that is linked to not being hydrated enough, maybe over time.
Right, and not only that, but it'll help you heal faster if you do have an injury, if you hydrate those muscles.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, on football fields, there's Gatorade, and that's because they're guzzling water because it is so hot, and then they supplement it with Gatorade because Gatorade balances your electrolytes when you're drinking that much water. So, and I have another area of specialization in voice, and it's amazing what a huge population I have the pleasure of working with, just specializing in voice. I also pursued a certification in the Parkinson's voice. That's right. And we offer a program, like Jane said, I work in outpatient therapy at Lakeside Hospital, and we have a full gamut of services for persons with Parkinson's. I am certified in LSVT Loud. That is for the Parkinson's voice. 89% of persons with Parkinson's will experience difficulties with their voices. And that's the very soft, mumbled voice that is very difficult to hear and understand. And 50% of persons with Parkinson's will have difficulty with swallowing. And many people with Parkinson's have difficulty with both. So what's really nice at the setup at Lakeside Outpatient Therapy, my coworker Jill Swanson is a phenomenal speech therapist, and she takes all of the speech therapy patients that are not voice. And we even share patients. If a person with Parkinson's is having difficulty being understood, I will work with them. Then they'll walk a few steps over to Jill, and she will help them with their swallowing. We also do modified barium swallow studies to check the safety of swallowing. As you know, a lot of neurological diseases are progressive, and changes happen over time. So Jill will take her swallowing patients. She'll get orders from the doctor into radiology, and they do an x-ray of when you swallow. They see where the food and drink goes. You're given things to eat and drink, and with the x-ray, you can't fool an x-ray. She checks to make sure they're not going into your airway so that you're safe and not prone to pneumonia. So back to the voice, I went to Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, to be certified in LSVT Loud. And I enjoy these patients so much. I worked with one this morning on helping them communicate so that their spouses don't have to. I will often ask, does your wife or your husband order for you in restaurants? Who answers the telephone? Who goes to the door? And the problem with Parkinson's is when you have difficulty being understood, you talk less and less and less. But the beauty of this particular disease, they found LSVT Loud has been doing research on Parkinson's for almost 20 years now. And Loud came first, and then physical therapy with Big came after Loud. But they were the first ones to really realize through their research that the key for Parkinson's is exercise. And you exercise your voice and you can strengthen your voice. There is no known cure for Parkinson's. Not only that, but Parkinson's is global. You will find it all over the world. You go to Hawaii, you'll find Parkinson's. You go to Egypt, you'll find Parkinson's. It is global. It is all over the world. There's no known cause and there's no known cure. But they have found that the blessing here, the silver lining to the cloud is exercise is the key. Exercise your brain, exercise your voice, exercise your heart and lungs, exercise your legs. It is the key to delaying the disease. And at Lakeside, we have both LSVT Loud with speech therapy, Big with physical therapy. Then we have group exercise programs for persons with Parkinson's called Delay the Disease. And so the good news here is exercise is the key.
That's good. And so, with so many things, that's key. But it's awesome that they've discovered that, because you can exercise so many things at home just by doing your normal daily things. And so if you need to exercise your voice, like you said, they can answer the phone, answer the door, talk more rather than talking less. I did not know that. That's very interesting.
Right. And that's what we say. Every kind of exercise is beneficial. But what's even more interesting is that these particular exercises in loud, big, and delayed the disease are specific to Parkinson's. So we want that person to continue their exercise programs, that they going to the gym, going to the Y, whatever they've been doing, continue that, but consider doing exercise programs that are specific to Parkinson's as well.
Sure. Very interesting. What other programs do you have? You've brought several materials in with you today, Mary.
Well, what I have here is, because I would like to also talk about what do we have to offer someone who is visually impaired or blind, and just I'll briefly go over the fact that I am on a voice team at Lakeside Hospital. I work with the ENTs at Lakeside Hospital. They send patients to me because of difficulty with voice or Parkinson's, and the visually impaired are just as prone as anyone to difficulty with their voices or Parkinson's. No one is spared. So, and what's really nice about what we have to offer is that we are a team, and we look at the total picture when we see someone, for example, who is visually impaired. We look for resources. We have a keyboard at work that's large and yellow for our visually impaired patients to see if that is easier for them to trial and use. We make referrals to Voc Rehab if the person has been in a car accident or had a stroke and may be visually impaired. We give them information to equipment loan programs. And we even have Vision Resource Coalition, which I'm sure Jane is very familiar with.
We are actually part of that organization. We're one of the members of the Vision Resource Coalition.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
And that doesn't surprise me a bit. Jane gave me a tour before we started talking, and it's Radio Talking Books is so impressive, and the services that they have are amazing. And not only that, but to do it on donations, volunteers, no state or federal help. And it's amazing what they're able to offer people through grant writing and donations. I'm so impressed.
Well, we do have a long history, 43 years. And so I can't take any of the credit. This was all going on before I came here. But we have a fabulous board and wonderful staff, very dedicated staff. And as I told you, very dedicated volunteers. We have someone in common. Bob is also on our board of directors, Bob Gotting, and usually reads on Fridays, but he wasn't here today. And he and Mary also know each other. So we'll have to razz Bob a little bit next time we see him.
I have personally, and Jill and I, and speech pathologists are always interested in learning. And not only are we committed to staying current to our patients, but to keep our speech pathology current, through the American Speech and Hearing Association, we have to have 30 continuing education credits. And for the state, our state licenses, we have to have 20 continuing ed units. And because I have always kept my teaching certificate, every 5 years, I have to go back and get post-grad college hours. That's why I'm the oldest college student, but it keeps us on the cutting edge of what's happening. And I went to actually Emmanuel. They had a vision rehabilitation interventions for neurological vision deficits. And because of that, I started referring patients who had had strokes or traumatic brain injuries that affected their vision Karen Wilson, Dr. Wilson was one of the presenters. And actually, this was a two-part, 2-day training. And she is a neuro-optometrist. And there's also neuro-ophthalmologists that we refer to as well. And also OTs. There are occupational therapists who specialize in vision, and they may even have some across the street at Emmanuel, because I remember with one of my patients who had had her 3rd stroke and it had affected her vision. I remember going through my resources and emailing this occupational therapist, and she answered me and she said, contrast for central vision loss is very important. It's also individual preference. As far as colored paper goes, yellow might work well. If we use electronic things like an iPad or electronic magnifier, people with central vision loss have preferred white text on a black background. Again, she said, use trial and error and what the person prefers. For macular degeneration, eccentric viewing techniques are really important so that they can see around the scotomas, and finding a viewing position of comfort for the patient. And I have worked with certainly more than one person who with cataracts or macular degeneration, and we go to our resources. We refer to low vision services because it's important to look at the person as a whole, the big picture. Because if I just work on voice and their vision impaired, I need to see that whole person, just like checking their medications, their diet, their lifestyle. If they need other resources, it's up to me to find out what would best suit that person so they can reach their full rehab potential. I can't put on blinders and say, okay, this is my job, this is what I do. We look to each other, I refer patients to physical therapy. I take my Parkinson's patients up to Delay the Disease, and I attend the class with them. And also, and I'm reverting back again, they've started singing at the end of Delay the Disease class on Monday. And this class has become so popular. We started out, and everyone in the class has Parkinson's, so it's kind of a support group too, where they can practice their big exercises, their loud exercises, and they learn from each other. We teach each other. Who's your neurologist? Can you sleep at night? What medications are you on? Then they exercise together. Well, it was once a week. Now it's 4 times a week.
Oh my goodness.
Because of popular demand.
Wow.
And so I got twisted and turned around back to Parkinson's, but it is one of my specialties. And as I said earlier, no one is spared from it. But it's important that we look to all of our patients' needs and refer out. Now, I've referred patients to Emmanuel. If they have a program that suits that, if they have an OT who specializes in vision impaired, and when I've sent my patients to Dr. Wilson as a neuro-optometrist, we work together to find where will this person get the most benefit.
Sure. Do you refer people to the Weigel Williamson Center?
Tell me about that.
Weigel Williamson Center for Low Vision is, and maybe I guess that maybe they're affiliated with UNMC. I'm not sure they're located down near there, but they are a separate building. But they focus on helping patients with low vision as they lose their vision. They want to work with them to benefit and take advantage of the most vision that they have left, or whatever level. But they have a kitchen set up and a bathroom and a dining room, and they work with them. And they also have supplies and adaptive technologies. They'll have, for instance, on the stove, little raised dots that they can put on, where's number 1 or number 2, or buttons on the microwave. And I just learned about those things not only here, but with my son, who's visually impaired. And it's very practical things. That one of the first thing I learned from visiting there was about the contrast, in color contrast. For instance, if your walls are white, make the light fixture plate a darker color, or if your wall is dark, put a light one on. I came home and was so excited to tell my son about that, and he goes, I know about contrast, Mom. And I said, sorry, I didn't know it. And he, you know, the mom-son relationship, he hadn't shared that with me, probably because I didn't need to know it. But some fairly simple things that can really be very helpful to people. But and they have things, magnifying glasses and large phones, you know, with large numbers, and large cards and large bingo cards. So many things, not just for enjoyment, but also for their daily things. One of the very simple, interesting things, again, they have a dining room set up, and the table is just probably like your average oak color. And there was a dark line around the edge because the table was very close to the color of the floor. And it actually, I believe, was just a thin piece of like black tape. But again, it was some simple practical solution that came up to show people, here's something you can do if you have carpet and a table, or table and flooring that are similar in color. Put a piece of black tape on the edge of the table, and then they'll be able to see that.
That's very creative.
Yes.
And I will add that to my list of resources. And I appreciate that, Jane. Thank you for telling me about that.
Yeah, and the gal down there, Linda Chilcott, I think is her name, but I can give you her contact information.
I would love that.
Yeah, because
Thank
it's a
you
great
much.
resource as well.
All right. Another thing that we were talking about before we went live was the fact that I have the pleasure of working with singers and injured singing voices as part of my specializing in voice. And my job with singers is to find what caused the injury to their voice, help them heal, and keep that a healthy voice. And that's very near and dear to me because I am a Sweet Adeline. I sing 4-part harmony a cappella with A Cappella Omaha. And we were talking about the Sweet Adelines have performed for the visually impaired and at the Roberts Center.
I think it was the Omaha Association of the Blind organization.
Correct.
Maybe. They meet on a
Correct.
regular basis.
Right.
Yeah.
And enjoyed that very much. So with singing, it's an excellent, healthy voice exercise. And to me, the definition of a singer is if you enjoy singing in the car, you are a singer.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be touring to be a singer. If you sing for your own personal enjoyment, singing is a very good tool to keep the voice healthy and exercised. And I mentioned earlier that we've started a singing group with our Parkinson's patients because, again, voice exercise is the key to Parkinson's, any exercise. And we are called the Lakeside Parkinson's Performers.
Oh.
And we have sung around town as a group. There is a UNMC has a wonderful symposium every year on Parkinson's, and it's in October. We sang last year, our group, for the Parkinson's Symposium, and then we have sung at the Jewish Community Center. We sang at the employees' lunch, and it's
amazing.
so empowering. It's so empowering with someone who has a progressive disease that has to live with it 24/7
Mm-hmm.
to get out in public and have fun.
Yeah. Oh, that is amazing. I was thinking of something while you were talking, and now I lost it because I was so enthralled in what you were saying. So that's fine. Let's share with our listeners your contact information, Mary. If they need to see, maybe they don't call you directly, but if they know someone or they themselves have something that they'd like to have checked out, who would they contact? A phone number or a website?
I'm glad you asked that. So at Lakeside Outpatient Therapy, My direct line, and it's a private line. No one has the password for me. If you have questions, is 402-758-5106. But you can also talk to your doctor. I get referrals for voice from general practitioners, ear, nose, and throat doctors, neurologists. Any physician can write orders for voice if you're having difficulty. And the fax number for orders at Lakeside Outpatient Therapy is 402-858-5092. And also the doctor can hand the patient a script. This person is to have speech therapy for difficulty with voice or for whatever reason. And the patient can call our schedulers at 758-5050. They are the outpatient therapy schedulers, and say, I have doctor's orders for speech therapy, and I'll bring them with me on my first visit.
Mm-hmm.
So do you need more information than that?
No,
My phone number, the scheduler's phone
Mhm.
number, and a fax number for doctors to use.
Right. No, that is perfect. And I always tell our listeners too that I keep this information on hand. So if you're listening out there and you're not in a place where you can stop and write, or you aren't sure you have the number correct, or for whatever reason, you can always call Radio Talking Book Service at 402-572-3003. And I can give you that information as well. And it was a referral from my doctor. I went in because I was having trouble with hoarseness, and I'd had it, throughout my life. And I was actually surprised when the ENT suggested I see a speech therapist or a speech pathologist. I thought that was the most bizarre thing in the world. But then I learned so much from you about practical, simple things that I can do in my life to change and heal my voice quicker, because after I saw you, I was able to do all those things and heal it. And then 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did some things that I probably shouldn't have done, like yelling at a ball game and screaming about fireworks, and then getting a cold and a sinus infection. But at least I know what to do to heal it and improve it. And the simple things like talking softer. I no longer holler at home. I was a big hollerer, from upstairs to downstairs or out the back door. And I don't now. And I love to sing, and singing in a lower tone. I'm a soprano. And in church now, I don't sing soprano, I sing lower, and I can still sing, and it doesn't hurt to sing. And so yeah, some very practical, simple things. So if anybody out there is having issues or knows somebody that's having issues, definitely give Mary a call or talk to your doctor about it.
Yes, and often people want to know, does insurance pay for this?
Mm-hmm.
Does my medical insurance pay for outpatient speech therapy? And insurance has changed so drastically recently that it's hard to keep track of all the changes. But Medicare, if you have Medicare Part B and a Medicare supplement, for people with Medicare, your B pays 80% of your outpatient bill, and your Medicare supplement pays the other 20%. And many people with Medicare have an annual deductible. So once your deductible is paid annually, then your physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy is covered 100%. And if you have other insurances like Blue Cross Blue Shield, Mutual of Omaha, those insurances often cover. You may have a copay. There is that 800 number on the back of your card you can call, but we also take a look at insurance when we get the orders so that you don't have any surprises at the end of the month. They'll go over with you if you have a copay, so that you can feel comfortable about getting the therapy you need and not worry about the finances.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We have a few minutes left, Mary, a couple of minutes here. anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to share with our listeners?
Well, I have 9 lives. I pursued, and I will talk quickly as I watch the clock. I pursued another certification that is under the umbrella of Voice, and I have a home office, and I do have my own private practice. But I saw a need for professionals to be able to reduce their foreign or regional accents so that they're more successful in the business world. If they choose to have a business career in the Midwest and they're difficult to understand, as a speech pathologist, I have a certification in helping foreign accented and regional accented professionals be more successful, help support their families, climb the ladder in the business world because they are more clearly understood in English.
That's very interesting. How do you advertise that? How do people find that out?
Well, I actually have a website.
Oh, you do?
Yes,
well, give that out.
Which is www.mary@underwoodaccentreduction.com. And if you're curious about it, on my website, there is a free speech screen. And if you complete the free screen, I will tell you what difficulties you are having with your speech, what your errors are. And if you decide to pursue it, then we pursue it. But what's interesting is that we all have accents.
We do.
I have an accent. We happen to have the Midwest American neutral accent, supposedly, but you go to Texas and Boston and Louisiana, you will hear regional accents. So we all have accents, but if you're having difficulty being understood and being productive at work, that's a service I provide.
It's very interesting. You are so multi-talented and so interesting. I am so happy and thankful that you took time out of your very busy schedule to actually block out an hour to come share with us and share with our listeners. I'm very thankful. Thank you so much for coming in, Mary.
Well, thank you, Jane. I am so glad our paths crossed, and I look forward to them crossing again.
Me too. And thank you to our listeners. This is Jane Nielsen with Community Conversations.
And thank you very much, Jane Nielsen, for bringing Mary Underwood in. Thank you very much, Mary Underwood. And this program will be repeated this evening from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Time. And you hear it all right here by listening to the Radio Talking Book Network in Nebraska. We've been proudly serving our blind and visually impaired listeners now for over 42 years. The Radio Talking Book Network is brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS-FM in Omaha and statewide through the facilities of NET Radio and Television. Now please stay tuned for the daily home delivery meal menus with Ann Pelican.
If you want to,
We did it.
yeah. If you want to tune in tonight on the internet or on a smartphone at 8 o'clock, you can hear
My non-fluent speech, my normal non-fluent
oh,
speech.
there, I just cleared my throat.
Wash it away.
But if you want to, if you're interested, we can get you a copy on a CD. But totally up to you. But TuneIn is a phone app on a smartphone.
Okay,
Or-
I have an iPhone.
Okay. Or if you just go to the internet, if you have a tablet or your computer,
I do.
go to rtbs.org and there's a listen live button there. So you can just listen live over the internet.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just so impressed with what you have to offer.
It's an amazing, that's why I invite so many people in from all kinds of different backgrounds, but their paths may cross people that are visually impaired or blind. And they can say,
I've worked with the visually impaired.
Yes,
My dear lady who had 3 strokes.
yeah, well, and you have a cousin.
So yes, and I have a cousin.
That's
Small
amazing.
world, isn't it?
Yes. Now, is he in Nebraska?
He's legally blind. He's in Omaha.
I'll have to ask him if he has Radio Talking Book.
I'll have to ask him.
Sometimes people are immediately confused and think we're the Talking Book and Braille service,
Right.
which we're not. We have a radio that reads newspapers and magazines. But he can have one. There's no no cost, no fee, no nothing.
That's
Get him
amazing.
one. Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
he has
he's
one.
legally blind.
So is my son.
From many eye surgeries. I think it started with the detached retina.
Oh no.
And he's had many eye surgeries, and he's legally blind.
That's scary.
Yeah.
That's scary. Have you heard of Outlook, Nebraska? Are you familiar with them?
I will be as soon as you tell me.
Okay. Outlook, Nebraska. They are actually right here. They're the driving engine behind this, but
okay.
we partner with them. But they're located at 72nd and F. Just employer of the blind and visually impaired.
I bet that's where my cousin works.
My son works there.
I'll bet they probably know each other.
Maybe they convert huge rolls of paper into toilet paper and paper towels. That's what they do.
Would you like my cousin's name? And you can ask your son if he knows.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, it's possible Dan is retired. He wasn't the last time I talked to him. But
Okay.
it's Dan Kramer, Kraemer. And Dan was very proud of working.
They are. 70% of the blind and visually impaired are not employed. So, and yet they're very employable. But
Exactly.
because of your connections and things, if you would like to take time out of your day another time, call and arrange a tour. Because if you're blown away by this, you will be super blown away by Outlook. And they're remodeling their facility right now. But
that sounds just like Dan talking.
Well, and the thing is, they're reaching out into the community. They train their employees, like my son, who's just got his apartment. He hasn't lived independently for 10 years.
Wow.
And that's when he lost his vision, was 10 years ago, for the second time.
Exciting for him.
But he's a little apprehensive as well. But they will teach. He doesn't have a smartphone. A smartphone could really help him in a lot of ways, but he's kind of anti-technology. But they will train their employees on adaptive technology, all the adaptive technology at work. But now they're opening that up to people in the community. So if there's visually or blind people in the community, they can be referred to Outlook for training, and it's free. They have grants that provide the training, provide the money for the training. So put that on your bucket list to go tour, especially since I'll have to find out. I actually might just email Lisa Kelly is there. Lisa Kelly is very active in the Vision Resource Coalition, and she's fabulous. In fact, if you go to their website, Mary, you'll see all kinds of YouTube videos, and they post stuff all the time. My son Dean is a golfer, and he was they interviewed him from the World Herald at their tournament that they had. He golfed in their tournament, and he was on the front page of the living section a couple weeks ago.
Oh, how exciting.
So they do a great job of publicizing the things that they're doing, exactly like you talked about the Parkinson's folks, the isolation that they feel, and then they do less and less. They're trying to combat that at Outlook, and they're doing a phenomenal job.
Oh, excellent.
4 of their blind employees were in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago testifying on employment issues for the blind and visually impaired.
And they're just as employable as anybody else.
Oh, yeah. The adaptive technology is amazing. And I think it was Lisa told this story. Maybe it wasn't Lisa. At one of these meetings, they told a story about someone they worked and they were called in. I did a no-no.
Wash your way.
I really have cut down on that, but this cold thing has got me. But there was, I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
The how well they communicate with the.
This person was employed, and was losing their vision. They must have had macula or something, and over time it was affecting their work, and they were afraid to say anything to anybody. They didn't know there were resources out there,
because they lose their job.
They were called into HR, and their job performance was brought up and questioned, and it finally came out that they were struggling with vision issues. And the HR person, and I have no idea what this was, they didn't say, but it was local. The HR person says, oh my God, we've got 5 or 6 people working here that are using the adaptive technology, whether it's a larger screen or a screen, whatever. There's a ton of that stuff.
And businesses will
They
accommodate.
will.
They have to. That's
because
right.
of ADA.
That's right. They
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But people don't know that, so they
They
try to
don't.
hide it.
Yes.
How sad is that?
So Outlook is really, they are at, are you familiar with Do Space down by the
Yes,
crossroads?
yes.
Okay. The trainer from Outlook, Nebraska is there the 3rd Friday of every month from 9 to noon.
Wow.
Just people
Just
can
for
come
visually
in.
impaired.
Yes, come in,
Wow.
learn about the services that we offer.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing, Mary. And you're doing so many different things. I just know that you would love to learn more about this because I know you'll help people.
Yes. Well, and resources.
Yes,
That's
yes.
right. And
Yeah.
It's so important to give choices. The person may
Mhm.
not choose it,
Mhm.
but I think it's wrong that we don't give them
Yeah.
choices.
And I wondered about that when I mentioned Weigel Williamson because they may, I don't really know if they are affiliated with UNMC.
But that doesn't matter.
But even if they are, yeah, people.
I see the movement specialist, we sang at UNMC's Parkinson's Symposium.
Okay.
We see a lot of the movement specialists are at UNMC. We see Dr. Bertoni's Parkinson's patients, Dr. Body's.
Okay.
Right. So
And I don't
it's all
know-
about working together.
Right. And I don't know what services Emmanuel has because you've talked about the different services and stuff, but they may refer people to Weigel Williamson as well.
Right.
Yeah.
When we refer back and forth, it's
Mhm.
whatever's best for the person.
Right.
Not,
Yeah.
are you Methodist? Are you?
Yeah. And if you like to go out and see operations, you could go see Weigel Williamson as well and see what they do. They're amazing. The doctor there is a Dr. Shepherd. And I've not met him yet, but I've spoken to him on the phone. And he said he'd come in and do an interview
Oh, how
sometime.
nice.
But it's Linda Chilcott, I think is her name, and they have an occupational therapist there, that does.
Low vision.
Yeah. And they have all this common everyday things to help people with as they lose their vision. So, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, you often wonder if you had to lose something, would you choose hearing or vision? And you just go, don't ask me. I can't imagine being without.
I know. I always thought I would say hearing. But I don't know. Then I think of the enjoyment that I get from music.
So why aren't we singing together?
Oh, I don't think I could sing. I don't think I could. My voice gets so tired so easy. In fact, that was one thing I was going to ask you about. Even though I'm doing all those things, it takes very little for it to get sore and hurt.
Well, and I know, is your insurance changed at all? I know your insurance was an issue.
I haven't heard from the insurance company.
Did you ever get a bill?
I have not gotten a bill. I shouldn't say that. I did get papers from my insurance company. It looked like they paid part of it.
Oh, good.
So, but I haven't gotten a bill yet.
Because I have gentle voice exercises.
That's what I was wondering so what I need to do is exercise.
Patient persistence.
Yeah.
And things that are very gentle on your voice. You always want to warm up. Professional singers warm up in a hot, steamy shower.
Mm-hmm.
Humming is great.
Yeah, you told me that.
So that your voice is warmed up before you start to sing.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't push when you sing. If you turn on YouTube videos and with lyrics, your favorite song, your favorite artist, and you said you're singing more in the alto range now.
Yeah.
But with gentle persistence, you can increase your range back to your soprano range.
I wondered about that.
Gentle persistence, but don't stop singing.
Right. No, I haven't stopped, but I do.
But sing every day.
I love to crank up the music and sing. But yeah, I'll have to check into that. And I know the week that I did both those things, and I had grandkids and lots of company, and I did do a lot of the things because I told people I have a sore throat. I'm not going to talk as much. I'm going to listen and talk softer. Always drank a lot of water.
But we have sweet Adelines who are in their 70s.
I know.
So there's no reason to stop singing.
I know.
I don't intend to ever.
Good for you. Good for you.
But it
My
takes
church
gentle
has a
persistence.
choir, and I thought I'd like to even do that sometime. But the night they have practice, I have a meeting, so I haven't done that.
Oh.
Down the road, maybe. I've got a long list of
Don't
stuff to
wait
do
too
when I
long.
retire. I know. It's committing to another thing, I
That's
have to be
true.
careful.
But you do have to take time for you.
Well, and that's what I
If
do.
all your commitments are for others.
No. I mean, the commitments are other things I enjoy. Like
Oh,
I
okay.
lecture at my church.
Oh, okay.
I'm a lector. And
And you sing in the congregation, yes?
oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
what church is this?
St. Columkill and Papillion.
Oh, I know we talked about this
You
because
did.
I've gone to mass many times.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm St. Gerald's.
That's
And
right.
I didn't mention on the radio, but I'm also in a quartet now.
Do you do barbershop?
Yes,
Yeah.
barbershop quartet.
So you
And-
probably know some of the Papillion Lions guys because some of them do a quartet. They have a barbershop group.
Um,
I'm trying to
I think-
think of
are they
who
the
that- Ron
Sar-
Flock? Did we talk about him? Ron
well,
Flock?
we might have. I would know them. We sing every August. We're the guest barbershop chorus for the men barbershoppers at Sumter.
Yes. I live right near there.
Oh, okay. Well, my quartet will be singing.
Oh,
this year. So, and we sing with the men, and but we are singing for a high school reunion, and we've sung at Anthony's at a country club. We have sung at St. Anthony's or Anthony's Steakhouse
Yes.
for a birthday party. But my favorite was we sang at St. Gerald's for their St. Patrick's Day celebration. Their Friends on Cue.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to
Fun.
sing for my own parish.
You are just extremely.
Busy.
You are.
That's true.
I'm-
No peace for the wicked.
No, I'm a member of the Papillion Lions, and such a good organization. And I just joined them like 3 years ago. Hasn't been too long, but my dad was a lion, and they're very supportive of this organization. In fact, that's how I heard about the job opening was through the Lions, through my
Wow.
group.
You were blessed. It was
I
meant to
was.
be.
It was. Yeah, it was.
Meant to be.
So, but they're a great group, and so that's what keeps me busy. That and work and
9,000
family.
other things.
Yeah. But it's all
So
good.
of my 4 grandchildren, well, Kellen just turned 9 and Aiden just turned 11. They both take piano lessons. Aiden takes piano and voice. And I started taking them to the Rose
Mhm.
Theater when they were 3 years old. And now it's getting more and more expensive. I took Kellen and Rowan to the Omaha Playhouse to see Beauty and the Beast.
Oh,
And I took Kellen to the Orpheum to see Cinderella. And this year I have tickets, and I've taken Aiden too. And now I have Simon coming up.
so you have 4 grandsons.
2 girls, 2 boys.
Which ones are girls?
Rowan.
Rowan.
And Kellen are girls.
Oh, okay.
And Simon and Aiden are boys.
Okay, because I know a
But
Kellen
They all
that's a boy.
right. And
Yeah.
a Rowan can
Can
be
be
a
either
boy's
one
name
too,
too. But in this case, they're 2 girls.
Oh,
So yes, I've started all of them at age 3 at the Rose, and the older they get, the more expensive they are. Because now we're going to the Playhouse and and I've taken them to the Holland too.
now there's John Fullerton.
Hi,
His,
John.
his father started Radio Talking Book.
Oh,
He was the executive director for 18 years,
Oh,
and he still comes in every Friday and reads.
oh.
Now, that says a lot.
That's devotion and commitment
And passion.
Right.
He was executive director for 18 years,
Wow.
retired about 3 years ago,
Oh,
and he's very humble.
Amazing.
So every time when I introduce him and say all that, he goes, "Oh, quick."
yes, but it's very rewarding when
Mm-hmm.
you touch lives and that life gets better. That's incredibly rewarding.
Well, and more so when they are volunteers.
Right, because that's true commitment.
Yeah, they're not getting paid.
I think we may have talked about the one time I had the pleasure of your company at Creighton. I read for visually impaired college students.
Yes. And we have a program that does that.
Oh,
Listening link. I should give you.
textbooks.
We read textbooks at Creighton and Wayne State.
Wow.
We used to do more, but there's more and more of that provided now through Audible and audiobooks, and many of your textbooks come with a CD. So there has been less demand for our services, but that is available as well here. We have volunteers that read
Just
books
think what
every
you
semester.
learn.
And that's why they do it.
Of
That's
course.
why they do it.
They are exercising their
Yes.
brains
And it's
and
funny.
hydrating their brains.
Some people are particular about what they want to read. Others don't care. They'll read anything. So we had, who is it? I think it was before my time, it was the last year. But it was like a science or something, or electrical engineering.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like, oh yeah, I want to learn that. Or they
I'll
take
read
it
about
and
that.
still read. One of our guys read the longest ones that we've had was one was business law,
Wow.
and another one was something law, corporate law, 76 hours of reading.
Wow.
76 hours. This summer we had 3 books, 3 courses that we read.
No kidding.
Last semester it was 16 maybe from the 2 colleges. So it just depends on.
So impressive.
And we actually get paid for that.
Good.
We get an hourly. We
Good.
get paid because the colleges obviously have funds for the disabled.
Right.
Some of them we have learned say they don't offer that service.
That's illegal.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so we're trying to figure out how to address that.
In a non-threatening way.
Right. Because we'd like to help provide that service.
Well, right, and that needs to happen.
Exactly.
It's education.
Yeah, and there's extra funding for those
Right.
that need
And they may not be aware of that.
well, or they're using it for something else.
Oh, yeah.
Not something else outside the realm, but
Right.
it's being used up by other things. But yeah, so that's not good. So do you have to go back to work this
Yes.
afternoon? Yeah, me too.
No rest for the weary.
No, and Wednesday we set up 7 radios, 5 in Papillion, 1 in Gretna, and 1 in Fremont.
Wow.
Yesterday I was in Grand Island at the VA and the Veterans Home.
Wow. That is such an amazing
Mm-hmm.
gift.
Yeah,
Such
it
a
is,
gift.
and they look, if they've had it before, they really miss it. This gentleman in Fremont has had our radio for a long time, but this is the 3rd time we're using that NET one, and they had their power was off in a storm or something, and for some reason it didn't come back on. All we had to do is go back up and reprogram it, but it's a 40-minute drive up and back. It's time, but we're working on a program to get some of the Lions members to maybe volunteer to do some of that.
And I bet they would.
I think they will, yeah. In fact, I'm going to make a presentation. I'm now on the board for the Papillion Lions, but I'll make a presentation at their August meeting and see if there's some people there. And then what we'd like to do is start a pilot program locally here, and then work the kinks out, and then extend it across the state, because there's Lions clubs across the state.
Of course.
And
yeah.
so
wow,
then-
what a great network.
Yes, yeah.
And you're already involved in your
Mhm.
and you're personally
Yes, yeah.
connected as
Mhm,
well.
mhm. Yeah,
So-
exactly. Hi, John.
Hi,
How are you? I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Good. Your information that you and Betty gave us was definitely helpful,
Okay,
and you can talk to Becca. We did find where
where
we think.
started and where
Yes,
things. And,
yes. So I think we found this.
Okay.
We
good.
found where it is and where it went, and so now the
Okay,
board will just
that's
have to
good.
decide how to fix it and move it back.
Fix it and move it back.
The
You need
funds, I think the one Vanguard fund got put into the Wilson fund. There were 2
Oh.
Vanguard funds, and they
Oh.
both went into Wilson,
to- Okay.
and one shouldn't have been.
Oh,
So
okay. So that's where that other.
that's why there was that difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all it took was that one sentence you said, that it was supposed to be in a fund with no risk, and it's like
Yeah.
there's no way there could be that growth then.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you
yes,
have you answered Bob Braun then yet, or
Becca's working on that. We've been
Okay.
researching
we'll
that
see how
too.
that turns out.
Yes, same here. You'll have to talk to Becca. She can give you more specifics.
Okay.
So, and because of my private practice, I joined the HR directors of the Midlands, and I'm a volunteer on their diversity committee.
Oh, nice.
And I'm also a member of the chamber, and they have just started a diversity.
The Omaha Chamber?
So,
Very good.
yes, I put in a 13-and-a-half-hour day Wednesday. I got up at 5:30 to be at Blue Cross Blue Shield for my diversity committee meeting, and then I was treating patients at 9. And then Dr. Oben sent a patient down at noon.
So then went your lunch
that was
break.
that was from Fremont. And I got to go to the ladies' room, and I drink a lot of water. I was dying. And eat lunch at 5 o'clock. And then I started my documentation preparing for the next day. I got home at 20 to 11.
Oh my God.
And I looked at my schedule for next week, and this Wednesday looks just as bad. So, and plus my coworker, who's so totally awesome, Jill Swanson, who takes everything now except voice. She has the nerve to go on vacation for 2.5 weeks, and she has a student teacher. So I get the student teacher, and I'm going, I don't know what's going to happen in Jill's caseload, because but it'll all work out. And Jill says to me, "I'm sorry to do this to you." And I said, "It's all right. I just may not be speaking to you when you get back." But she, of all the speech pathologists in my very long career that I've worked with, she is heaven on earth. I would not choose, and that's so important, to team with someone who we're on this. We've gone to head and neck cancer conferences together. We went to this low vision together. We are so on the same page. I refer to her, she refers to me.
I know what that's like. That's how I feel about Becca.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Blessed. Because if you don't have that kind of, that same mindset, same commitment, same passion, life can be not pleasant.
Right. Plus, she has a great deal of knowledge. She was a volunteer here for 2 years.
Oh.
And then she's been on staff 2 or 3 years.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, lots of good knowledge. Yeah, for sure.
Well, you were meant to be here for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
And to be led to this job.
I think so, yeah. And actually, I interviewed the first time there was an opening here. And they chose a different person. He happened to have a physical disability, and I felt really good about that. But then he didn't work out. And so then it's when I interviewed them the second time, some of the questions, and I finally said, "You guys know I interviewed the last time." Well, it was different people, and now they didn't know it.
Oh.
So, timing is everything.
That's right.
So,
And it was meant to be on its own time.
exactly. So, and in between times, I took a job that was a more technical job. It was, I had security clearance at the base and worked at the base in IT.
Wow.
Yeah, not anything I would have ever chosen to do, except again, it kept coming back to me from different people, and you should really look at this, and blah, blah, blah. So I did that for 9 months, and I learned a lot, but I did also learn that I didn't want to do it for another 5 or 10 years. And so again, then when this opened up, it's like, yeah, I know.
And you
where I
took
need to
that
be.
learning here.
Exactly.
No, I
Exactly.
had to take jobs to support a family.
And you said you liked every one of them, and
yes.
I didn't.
And I
butt
learned
in.
something.
Exactly.
You
Every
learn what
job
not to do, and you learn what to do.
Exactly.
So it's all, you can't take an experience and say, "I wish that had never happened to me. I wish I'd never done that," because you learn what to do and what not to do.
Exactly. And you learn.
And I've liked every job while I was there.
Something about
right.
it. Yep.
Right.
Even that one at the base one, and I did. I learned stuff. I loved the people. I really loved. I had never. Things come to you, and you're finally able to verbalize something more like a feeling. And the structure and the discipline in that environment, it was like, oh, I love this. And I would have, if somebody had said, "What do you like about?" or "What's something you like about your work?" I would have never said structure and discipline. And yet I am kind of that way. I never really felt like I had, I was in outside sales, and I worked for a chamber of commerce, and things that you don't typically think of as being structured and disciplined. And yet there's a faction of that in everything we do. And, but that's what I found I really, really liked, was that structure and discipline there, and protocols, and it was very interesting, very interesting. Active shooter training. And
Yeah, we get that at work.
I know you
It's a
do.
little scary,
I know.
but it's way too real.
It is in this, anymore. It is
It's
in the work
discouraging.
environment, and we think it's happened to doctors. And I'm just going to ask you about. I didn't want to ask this during the interview, but have you had any doctors? Because we have a lot of foreign doctors that ask for that.
I've had a couple of them.
The accent,
The problem with physicians is finding the time.
time. That's
And
exactly what I
have
thought.
had residents inquire too,
Mhm.
but they almost work residents harder than they work doctors. So
Yeah.
they're definitely interested, because if you can't understand your doctor, you change doctors.
Exactly.
There was a time when it was Dr. God. That's gone.
Yeah.
If your doctor doesn't
Except
have
the
good,
older people.
Right,
Still
my
talk
parents.
about my in-laws.
right?
Yes.
Oh dear. But if your doctor doesn't have a good bedside manner,
Mhm.
doesn't answer questions,
Yeah.
you can't understand them, you go somewhere else.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yes, I have had them
Is it
inquire.
extensive as far as time commitment to
Well,
do it?
I just happen to have it with me. In my purse, I have a brochure and a business card. I have 2 courses, a 7-week course and a 13-week course.
Is it like once a week
Yes.
for 7
Well,
weeks?
it's once a week, face to face.
And then they have
But
work to do.
part of the package is they get a free lifetime online program
Oh.
that they can use forever. And
And use from home or from work.
correct. I worked with a vice president COO of a large company in Omaha that's all around the country, and I went to his office, and he had it at work and he had it at home. So I give assignments, but plus they need to, I'm currently working with a priest and I'm going to start working with a TV reporter. She wants to get rid of her Chicago accent. She
Mm.
wants to sound more,
Mm.
I thought that was interesting, because
I was gonna say,
Chicago
there's not
is
a big
not a whole
difference.
lot of difference,
No.
but that's important to her. So
Yeah.
she came to my home office and we discussed her goals and what she wanted. And I said, I have a free screen on my website. You can take it. She said, no, let's just do it. So, and I worked with another, and they're just such wonderful people.
Mhm.
And they teach me,
Yes.
my clients teach me, my patients teach me. But one gentleman found me on my website. He was from West Africa and a civil engineer. And when he was hired at his job, they said, we will hire you as an engineer, but you have to reduce your accent. We can't understand you. And they said, if you want to keep your job, you have to reduce your accent. We can't understand you. So he got online and found me online.
Yes.
And he has 3 children, and his long-term goal is to start his own engineering company, but he can't market it if people can't
No.
understand him.
And that's another thing. I guess I should have thought that it was available, but you think about speech therapy, and this is
Right, and this isn't
very much a part of it.
Right, and you don't need a doctor's order because there's nothing wrong.
No.
It's just an accent.
Yeah.
I have one, you have one.
Yeah.
You don't need a doctor's order because there's no deficit, there's no disorder.
Mhm.
It's just that you have an accent that's making you less productive, and you're not climbing the ladder and being as successful as you may want to feed your family. And so there's it's strictly choice.
Mhm.
So, but in my purse I have some
Okay,
information I
alright.
can give you too. So
I can refill your water too. Before
Oh,
you go out if you need
thank you. I appreciate that. Water's a good